Italian. So if you want to hear this speech,
edizione, è noto ormai, è la piattaforma di riferimento europeo per la Green Economy. E in un contesto come quello globale, caratterizzato da grandi incertezze, da guerre belliche combattute in Europa, guerre commerciali, crisi energetiche, tensioni sui mercati, misure daziarie protezionistiche, sanzioni anche legittime, in un contesto che sempre più appare come un caos globale, crediamo che sia proprio l'Europa e certamente l'Italia che deve saper guidare la transizione, non subirla, ben sapendo che si tratta anche di una transizione geopolitica. Come governo italiano e come Ministero delle Imprese del Made in Italy crediamo nella decarbonizzazione dell'economia europea, ma rifiutiamo l'approccio ideologico, costoso e disancorato dalla realtà produttiva. Sappiamo che occorre coniugare, come non si è fatto purtroppo sino ad oggi, la sostenibilità ambientale con la sostenibilità economica e sociale. Gli obiettivi climatici non sono in discussione, lo sono le modalità, i tempi e le procedure con le quali intendiamo raggiungerli, che devono essere compatibili con la crescita industriale e l'occupazione, devono essere appunto sostenibili. Per questo l'Italia si è posta alla guida in Europa di un percorso di revisione del Green Deal per renderlo più realistico e competitivo, flessibile e pragmatico. Diciamo sì alla transizione ecologica, ma no alle follie che rischiano di indebolire il nostro tessuto produttivo e di gravare su famiglie e imprese. Abbiamo già ottenuto risultati concreti, a partire dal successo nella battaglia per difendere, per riaffermare il principio di neutralità tecnologica, cioè di libertà tecnologica, di libertà nella scelta, di libertà nella scienza. Questo riguarda il settore automotive, cioè l'industria, la primaria industria dell'auto europea, ma riguarda anche altri settori. Abbiamo presentato un non-paper con cui abbiamo chiesto di rimuovere l'ostacolo delle supermulte e di anticipare la revisione del regolamento CO2 a questo trimestre. Entrambi gli obiettivi ragionevoli sono stati raggiunti. È stata modificata la normativa sulle supermulte per consentire alle imprese delle auto europee di restare in campo, ancorché soffocata da lacci e lecciuoli, e la Commissione ci ha detto che il prossimo 10 dicembre dovrebbe essere la giornata decisiva per quanto riguarda la revisione del regolamento CO2 sulle auto. Non è più tempo di discussioni o di ulteriori rinvii. Bisogna decidere e farlo con chiarezza. Abbiamo condiviso la nostra posizione con la Germania, importante e significativa svolta, e stiamo rimuovendo anche le resistenze della Francia, perché insieme vogliamo lavorare, le grandi industrie europee, le grandi nazioni industriali europee. E siamo impegnati per tutelare anche le altre filiere strategiche, a cominciare dalla siderurgia, dalla chimica, con la revisione del SIBA, ma che anch'esso che anch'essa, revisione del SIBEM, sarà all'ordine del giorno della Commissione nella stessa giornata, il 10 di dicembre. Lo scorso marzo, inoltre, insieme a Francia, Paesi Bassi, Ungheria, Spagna, Repubblica Ceca, Slovacchia e Romania, abbiamo presentato un non-paper, cioè un documento di indirizzo contenente proposte per rafforzare la competitività e la resilienza della chimica europea, e da quelle proposte è nato a luglio il piano d'azione europeo per l'industria chimica. L'Italia incide come mai prima è accaduto. L'Italia incide perché oggi è un paese credibile, affidabile, considerato stabile in un contesto di incertezza, un paese con una sua leadership riconosciuta in Europa e a livelli internazionali. Abbiamo inoltre lavorato per la revisione del meccanismo SIBEM sul carbonio e le frontiere e su proposte concrete per l'Industrial Accelerator Act, per creare finalmente una politica industriale europea a tutela delle imprese energivore, cuore della manifattura e della sovranità produttiva. Ci siamo trovati recentemente a Berlino nell'alleanza dei paesi amici dell'industria con la Germania, la Francia, la Spagna e altre nazioni, ben consapevoli finalmente tutti con noi che occorre decidere, che occorre guidare il processo di riforma. Sul piano nazionale investiamo con decisione per accompagnare le imprese nella decarbonizzazione dei loro processi produttivi e per rafforzare e rendere competitive le filiere clean, con una serie di strumenti, da quelli per la transizione digitale green delle imprese ai contratti di sviluppo net zero e per la sostenibilità dei processi produttivi, passando per i programmi importanti, significativi, IPCEI. In questa sessione di bilancio destiniamo 4 miliardi di euro per il nuovo piano Transizione 5.0, che introduce lo strumento dell'iperammortamento libero dai vincoli europei, grazie proprio all'uso di risorse nazionali, così da divenire accessibile anche alle imprese energivore che finora ne erano escluse proprio per i diktat della Commissione e che finalmente potranno esse per prime utilizzare gli incentivi di transizione 5.0. Siamo infine impegnati nel rafforzamento della nostra autonomia strategica nelle materie prime critiche. Abbiamo realizzato, primi in Europa, un decreto legge per rendere praticabile il regolamento europeo sulle materie prime critiche. I primi progetti già approvati dalla Commissione insistono in 4 regioni e ancora una volta le nostre imprese hanno puntato innanzitutto sul riciclo, perché sappiamo di saper fare meglio degli altri questa economia circolare al fine di ridurre la dipendenza estera e di rafforzare l'autonomia strategica del nostro continente, tanto più alla luce di quello che recentemente è accaduto e potrebbe continuare ad accadere per quanto riguarda le importazioni di materie prime critiche, di terre rare dalla Cina o da altri soggetti. Insieme al Ministero dell'Ambiente e a Confindustria stiamo supportando le imprese nelle candidature europee per la nuova call che è in corso sui progetti strategici. Ci auguriamo che altre imprese presentino le loro candidature per rafforzare in Italia l'estrazione, la lavorazione, soprattutto il riciclo di materie prime critiche. L'Italia, la nostra Italia, vuole essere protagonista, non spettatrice, di una green economy che unisce, che unisca realmente, finalmente, sostenibilità e sviluppo industriale, innovazione e occupazione, decarbonizzazione e competitività. Grazie e buon lavoro.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for this applause, in particular for the ones who are not Italian and who understood perfectly well the message of our minister. But we will translate it and put it online. So if you wanna read it from tomorrow on, you will see the translation. Thanks. My name is Raimondo Orsini. I'm the Director of Sustainable Development Foundation. We are partner with Ecomondo in organizing the States General of the Green Economy. I'm very glad to start for the very first time in the history of States General of the Green Economy in Ecomondo a completely international session, all in English. We would like to give you, and together with you, the pulse and the sensation about how is the green economy in this particular moment of history going in the world. We know that there are many threats, some criticism, some possible chances of development. In a few days, the COP30 will start in Belém, in Brazil, next Monday, and from tomorrow the head of states will be there to discuss possible agreement on deforestation, on targets, on the national NDC, on climate finance. It's a very important moment. So I'm very glad to have this discussion with you, and I know that there are people from many different countries. Is there anybody from Ireland here? What about Iran? Wow. China? Great. Mexico? Okay. And there will be other ones coming. They are still in the traffic jam. So they will see the conclusion of this very interesting session. So before we start, let me ask the CEO of Italian Exhibition Group, Corrado Peraboni, to open the floor to this session. So, Corrado, the floor is yours. You need an ice cream. Yeah. You have the most important exhibition on ice cream in the world here in Rimini, but...
Okay, I can speak loudly.
Okay, this is your ice cream.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our group, Italian Exhibition Group, a warm welcome to Rimini and to the 28th edition of Ecomondo. Organizing the show together with our friends of Fondazione per Sviluppo Sostenibile, what we experienced and learned is that there was no single company, no single organization, association, or public decisors that was able to face the great challenges coming from the green transition. And since only 12 months after the last edition of Ecomondo, the international situation is so deeply changed and so deeply still changing that what we have to learn is that no single government, no single country, or even no single region of the world could face the new situation which is underway nowadays out there. That's why we tried, and we do understand, we decided to increase the international approach, the international rate of presence here at Ecomondo, starting from this year, both in terms of exhibitors, in terms of visitors, but also in terms of contents. That's why we decided, together with the foundation, to create this moment this morning. And our expectation is that after this meeting we will have some new good ideas or a better understanding to the direction to be taken to avoid to be interrupted our path toward the green transition. This is the real danger, real risk that we are underway nowadays, and together we try to give some answer to this new challenge. Thank you.
Thanks, Corrado. Thanks very much. We know that there are many delegations here. So you will see speakers talking about China, talking about the United States and Trump's administration possible backlash for climate action. You will see Europe and Europe. Yesterday we had in Europe, in Brussels, the Environmental Minister Council before the COP, and we will also see for the first time Africa. Very interesting news from Africa. So before we start this, I need the changer of the slides, the pointer. I don't know, where is it? I would like to tell you something about our perception of the moment we are in. Thanks very much. So the title of this session and the title of the whole State General of the Green Economy is Driving the Future in Times of Uncertainties. These are times of uncertainties, this is clear to everybody. Many question marks, and how is green economy positioned in these uncertainties? Can green economy be an answer or not? We are facing, sorry, it doesn't, there are many uncertainties this morning. Okay. Yesterday there was a very nice speech about how Green Deal in Europe was going perfectly. Mr. Gentiloni, who was a commissioner, he said very clearly, we had constructed a very important strategy, but then the world changed. Pandemics, we all remember what that didn't mean for us, and now this has changed our perception. Okay. Wars, how this is changing our perception of the future and our certainty and perception for the future. Geopolitical tensions, every day we hear possible fight, possible tension, one country against another. So it seems like all these tensions is bringing uncertainty for the future. Poverty increasing, social inequalities all over the world, also in advanced countries. Artificial intelligence, is this changing the soul and the potential of the mankind for the future? Will the robots decide everything? All this brings uncertainty to us. But the very important question, because this is something that has been pointed by some criticism towards environment and green, as is environmental sustainability not important anymore? Suddenly, did it become something like a scam, a hoax, something not high in the agenda? Should we focus on different priorities, on these other priorities, and change direction? This is the main point, because there is this kind of criticism going on. And I think that if we are serious, we should make these questions to ourselves. And when we made this question, I remembered that there was one guy in 1966, Kenneth Boulding, who wrote a very important treatise. He said, the economics of the coming spaceship, Earth. He scientifically demonstrated that the Earth is like a spaceship floating in the universe. And like every spaceship, there are some specific rules, technical rules, amount of oxygen, amount of CO2, scientific rules that can make life on this spaceship working. Otherwise, they will die and the spaceship will not function anymore. He wrote this in 1966, before the Eagles wrote Hotel California. That was a song that we yesterday said that something related possibly to Trump backlash, and Hotel California said, you can check out, but you can never leave. Okay, so before that, he wrote this. So I ask you, together with me, to try and imagine looking at this video for a few seconds. Look at the Earth, saw from 400 kilometers high, a starship floating with some specific scientific rules. So if you see Earth in this way, the Earth in this way, what we see is that we are breaking all these rules. And Rockstrom, another very famous scientist, wrote this, the trajectory of Anthropocene, the great acceleration. There are some socio-economic trends that are breaking all these rules of the life on the Earth. What is important is not the initial number, is what happened in the last 50 years, how incredibly high is the amount of increase of population in 50 years or 60 years, increase of real GDP, increase of urban population in the cities, increase of water use. You know, starting from 50 to now, look at the increase, sudden increase of that, and this is breaking the rules. And these socioeconomic trends, like primary energy use, fertilizer consumption, you know, we have different of these indicators, hundreds we can show, of how this has increased in 50 years, led to some Earth systems trends, breaking the Earth system rules. Tropical forest loss, carbon dioxide, ocean acidification, methane, surface temperature, marine fish capture, and many others. So, if we reflect on this, and if we reflect on this phrase that Kenneth Boulding wrote, that you maybe know, anyone who believes that exponential growth can go on forever in a finite world is either a madman or an economist. Maybe we should agree that economists made some mistakes and we are breaking those rules. Think about green economy and think about how green economy can be a change of perspective. So now we need a compass in this period of uncertainty. We need a compass to understand which is the North Star and how we can go in the right direction. What do we do when we have a compass?
If you're working on a map that has no grid lines, then what you can do is you can line up the edge of your compass space plate with the edge of the map border. So you can do that either on the end, or if you want it, even across this nice flat surface here, you could line it up across the top of the map that way. Note that the top of the maps are always written with the tops north, so we know that this is north because we can read everything. This is the right side up.
We need a compass to understand where is north, where should we go in this time of uncertainties. And so if we take this in mind, maybe we find something that can be helpful. First, green economy is the answer to social and economical problems. We know, yesterday we spoke about the cost of damages of climate weather events. How much does it cost to global GDP? A lot. But let's think about the social aspects. 2024 extreme weather have led to the highest number of climate migrants in the state of global climate of the World Meteorological Organization report of this year. Wars I found this article talking about Russia invasion in Ukraine, and the emission of this war are comparable to Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic and Slovakia emissions of 1 year. Only the emission created by the first year of war. And safety and security, international security, why the war happens? The war happens because there is a fight for power, for materials and for energy. And if we have the raw critical material suppliers share like this in the world, we need the green economy to recycle, we need the green economy to find new solutions, otherwise there will be more and more conflicts for raw materials. Health for humans, this is something that we are not talking enough. This is the report by The Lancet, the most important health magazine in the world, a few weeks ago. You know, the diseases are increasing a lot due to climate change, but also to emissions, to coal, and to many other impacts on human health. Let's not think about the planet, let's think about us and our children. Food, and how agriculture produces food. Let's think about how many deaths and diseases can come if we don't adopt natural capital protection and regeneration of the food system. So my conclusion for today is that when I reflected on this, I think that green economy is the compass. It's not something that is different from the other uncertainties. It can give an answer to many of these uncertainties. And if we lose our compass, even in this very difficult time, we will simply lose our north. So we can criticize something can be adapted in the Green Deal in Europe, for example, but if we destroy the home of the green economy, we destroy our future. Thanks very much. So, now I would like to tell you how we will proceed, and first of all, I would like to call on the stage my co-moderator of today. She's the correspondent from Italy of the Financial Times from Rome. So let me welcome Amy Kazmin on the stage. Please, Amy, come in. And I tell you how Amy and I decided to proceed. For each of the speech, USA, China, Europe, and Africa, we will introduce first some very specific introduction by Italy for climate, the climate initiative of our foundation, who will give us a few key data and numbers, and then we will go into the first dive. So you can introduce Chiara Montanini for each of the speech, starting from USA. The floor is yours.
Okay, hello everyone, welcome, and thank you very much for being here. We're gonna have a romp across the globe in the next hour or so, talking about the state of the green economy and the politics around it and the money around it. So to get us started, let me please call Chiara Montanini to the stage, and my fellow panelists also, let's all come up at once. Oliviero Bergamini from TG1 Rai, who was formerly stationed in the US, who's going to be joining us and talking about the politics in the US, and Davinah Uwella, the Director of Climate Change and Green Growth at the African Development Bank. Thank you. Can you sit here? Okay. Sorry. So we're going to start with Chiara giving us a little briefing about the state of the green economy in my home country, the USA. I thought it's better. I'm mic'd.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Amy, for welcoming me on stage. My role here is not to answer these very complicated questions, or at least I will just try, but to give some key numbers and insight to introduce the debate about four key players of the green economy. Number one is the United States. We all know the role that the United States has had and continues having in the green economy and in the energy transition in particular. The United States is the major global economy for per capita emissions. It's the first country with 18 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per capita, 3 times the global average, and is the first country for historical climate responsibility since the Industrial Revolution. Since 1990, which is the base year for calculating emissions reductions, the US only reduced GHG emissions by 3.7%, and we will see later in comparison with Europe that this is 10 times less the effort that the EU managed to reach. We all know, we all have assisted to what the news and the new presidency is telling the world about the role of the United States in green economy and in the energy transition. A major focus is, of course, about fossil fuels, because the United States are the first world producer both for gas and for oil. That seems, at least from what politics is talking about, that the US is driving its economic growth as a petrostate, in contrast with the electrostate route that China is taking. Last but not least, concerning e-mobility, the EV market continues to grow. It has stagnated in 2024, but is expanding again. And no longer Tesla is the first EV producer in the world. It was just surpassed by Chinese BYD. What to expect from 2025 and beyond? Again, a very difficult question to answer. I'm just giving you some estimate from the federal energy agency. The first estimate is about CO2 emissions that are expected to increase in 2025 by 1.8%. The reason being increased coal consumption and a record high of gas consumption. Another estimate that we have is from the International Energy Agency, and is about investments in clean energy. $390 million are invested, and the United States are now the second economy for clean energy investment in 2025. We don't know, or probably we can say that these numbers do not reflect yet concrete impacts from recent policy changes. It's too soon to say, probably, but definitely so far, at least a good news. Not as much as of a good news is instead the estimates that the International Energy Agency is making about renewables and about electric vehicle sales, because in both cases, the forecast from the agency has been reduced by 45% compared to last year's estimate. So, again, once again, very difficult to make scenarios, but it's a sign. As for climate targets, as we all know, unfortunately, the United States withdrew from the Paris Agreement, and for now, they canceled 2030 and 2035 targets, as well as the net zero targets. Once again, we cannot predict future, but this is how they are presenting themselves at COP30 in Belém, and we all remember the words that President Trump said at the UN summit last September, and among many things about climate change and renewables, he also said, you need strong borders and traditional energy sources if you're going to be great again. And Climate Action Tracker Initiative is now ranking the US situation in decarbonization as critically insufficient. I am closing again, inspired by our president's speech from yesterday, with this quote from a very recent article from The Economist, saying Mr. Trump's anti-solar crusade may end up calling to mind the Eagles' best-known hit, Hotel California. Like our director also said, you can check out anytime, but you can never leave, and this is hopefully a positive expectation that we can have for green economy to be stronger than political uncertainties for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Thank you for setting the stage for us so effectively. So, as you've heard, you know, obviously the noise coming out of Washington, D.C., and there is quite a lot of noise by that president, is quite negative towards the issue of climate change. He describes it as a hoax. Funding has been cut off. But of course, we also know that, you know, the United States is much bigger than one man, even if he is the president. There are states, there are cities, there's the citizens, there are the business world. So the question is, for all the ruckus that he makes, President Trump, is it really so dire, or will there still be some kind of green transition that can go forward? Here to discuss that with me today is Oliviero Bergamini. He is currently the foreign editor of TG1, which is the major news state-owned broadcaster channel here, and he previously spent 3 years in New York as a correspondent in the US. So I'd like to start by asking you, I mean, you know, everyone hears the noise that Trump makes, and it tends to dominate. But what is kind of going on underneath that noise, and how do you see the prospects for the US?
Thank you everybody for being here. Of course, it's a very complex question. First of all, I think we must understand that Donald Trump is not just trying to slow down or you know, counter a trend. There is a lot of ideology. The second Trump administration is something different from the first administration. It's based on this Project 2025, which is this, you know, agenda for conservative measures that actually aims at really restructuring radically the entire state, the entire culture in the United States. It's almost like a religious kind of drive. And so the administration is moving on many different levels, and it's really hard to try and assess the impact if we don't understand how articulated the effort is. The new Environmental Protection Agency Director, Zeldin, has pledged to, I quote, put a stake in the heart of the climate change religion, as if, you know, climate change was some kind of ideology which is connected with the deep state, with the idea that leftist elites obscurely run America. So there's really a huge program, all-encompassing, which, you know, we know that Trump has cut funding for renewables, has changed the heads of many you know, environmental agencies, but has acted on many levels. Your paper recently reported that in London last month there was a conference about like a pact about shipping, like global pact about shipping, that would have set very low standards for emission. And United States officials there, they did everything they could to derail that pact. Even has been, you know, what the representatives of many countries have stated to the Financial Times. They threatened physically, you know, that, I mean, you're not going to have visas anymore. You're not going to have like tariff concessions anymore if you vote for this pact. And so the pact was derailed. That's just to give an idea of how articulate and how intense the drive is. But of course, the reality is something that you have to deal with. So there are many aspects, but as the initial data also show, there is a huge trend. Okay, so it's really hard to stop it, even harder to reverse that trend. But what can happen is going to be slowed down, and it's going to have like political consequences, also because the United States is so influential, you know, on a world scale. But it also depends on many political and judicial things that could happen. I will just give you an example. The Trump administration, first thing that it did, you know, day one, signed an executive order withdrawing the United States from the Paris agreements, and also setting the stage for several measures, among which Then last summer, Congress did away with the tax credits for clean energy investments. Tax credits that were put in place by the Biden administration, they were supposed to run through 2030. Now they're going to expire next July. So if you don't start building a clean energy plant of some kind by July 2026, you're not going to have tax credits, which account for 30% to 50% of the cost. So they are huge tax credits. They're going to be expiring. So what's going on now? That it's a paradox. States and private companies are rushing to install more solar and clean energy, plants of any kind than before. So 2026 is going to be like the year where you had the greatest rush towards, it's like going to be a solar energy boom in the United States. It's like a counter effect because you don't want to lose the credits, so you rush your investments and the states are trying to streamline the authorization procedure. Of course, some states, not all the states, but there are about 20 states, 24 states that are part of a clean energy sort of regions, yes, like an organization that puts together the states, California, Maine, whatever, states that are going towards clean energy more and more. So you have these tax credits are going to be expiring, but you have solar energy that's going to boom over the next few months. Probably in 2028, the cancellation of the tax credit is going to have the strongest effect, and that's going to be like a real slowdown on the solar investment. But on the other hand, I'll just give you a few points, then we can go deeper. As you all know, you're experts, you're people who know the field. There's an economic factor. I mean, Trump has been trying to, give new energy, new thrust to fossil fuel production, but building a gas plant or a nuclear plant is expensive, it's costly, it takes a long time, whereas solar panels and batteries, which are very important, have become cheaper in many environments, many regions, depends on several factors. However, they're very cost effective with respect to the fossil fuel industry. So there's just an economic reason why you should keep investing in solar energy. And that has to do also with the new AI environment, because as we all know, AI is based on data centers. Data centers don't run, well, they do, but most of them run on electricity. And the cheapest way to improve the supply of electricity for data centers now is through renewable, many times, and batteries, which have been making great progress in terms of efficiency and so on. So there's the AI trend that is pushing in a way towards renewables. Even recently there was this AI robot that is able to install solar panels at an incredibly fast pace. So you have innovations in the industry that are pushing towards green energy. And I can end for now, but it's very interesting. There's the judicial aspect. Trump is trying to undo a key provision that was set by several government documents, that is the endangerment principle. That is the principle by which we recognize that carbon emissions are bad for public health. That's the foundation for all the legislation. And he's trying to have that canceled. Okay, so there's going to be a judicial litigation that if the Supreme Court agrees that that basic principle is not valid anymore, that basically takes away the judicial framework for regulating emissions. That's one thing. The other thing is the big battle is on the emission standards set by California and by at least a dozen of other states. California has been granted waivers to basically, I'm making it very simple, but making its own emission standards. And of course, California is a great state, big state, bigger state in the United States, a big economy. So whatever California says is going to be standard for the entire United States, because no car maker, no automaker wants to make cars that are not allowed to drive in California. Trump has attacked this thing, especially the fact that California has pledged to do away with the sale of gasoline engine cars by 2035. Trump says this is crazy, this is absolutely madness. So the Congress passed a law that it's not a law anyway, passed a provision that aims at prohibiting that, at canceling that, and nullifying that. California and other states have sued. So there's going to be a big judicial battle, and we will see whether the Supreme Court will actually say that the federal provision attacking state rules must be defended, or conservative judges should be in favor of states' rights, or the states have a right to rule on their own emissions. And so that's going to be like a big issue. It's going to be decided over the next few years. And this is just one example of many of Trump's policies. There's a big judicial issue going on. A lot is going to depend on whether on November 2026 Trump will win or lose the midterm elections. So overall, then we can go deeper into many aspects. But overall, Trump's efforts are slowing down, with some paradoxical effects, like solar plants being actually built at a faster pace. But there's still a lot to see about what the outcome is going to be. And also there is like a lot of force in the private sector. We have huge companies like Amazon, like even Ford, who have set zero emission targets over the next years. And of course, there is a global slowing down or concern with the green economy, but those targets are still there. So we'll see whether there's a reverse of that, but it's kind of hard to expect that. It's more complicated than this, but I hope I provided some aspects of at least.
That was a fantastic overview, and I mean, I think it also shows how very complicated it is. Yes. That in the U.S. system, you have Trump as a very kind of, he really hogs the limelight, but there are a lot of other actors pushing back in various ways and that have different powers. I must say that I'm rather struck by the fact that they were so desperate for states to have the right to make their own abortion laws,
right.
but
so there's
completely
a big contradiction.
opposed to the idea that states should be able to set their own emission standards for cars. So, there's a profound hypocrisy there. I wonder if the Supreme Court, which said states should have the right on this, will now come and say, but no, you can't have the right on that. So that really will be something to watch. I think two questions that really come to mind is, where does the business community stand on all of this? I mean, Trump is kind of up, he's on his own trip. He has his own ideas of, what's right and how the world should be, and the climate change is a hoax and all this kind of thing. But where does the business community stand on that? Because at the end of the day, in a lot of ways, he can say what he wants, and of course, if he pulls tax credits that encourage green investments, that's a problem. But businesses also have their own view on what they should be doing and on what they should be spending on. I mean, do you think that big business is appreciative of Trump's efforts to dial back regulation and programs that support green investments, or are they in fact not that happy about this? And are they, is he a tool of big capital at this point in time, or is there actually discomfort with his, and I'm also kind of interested on public opinion. I mean, do you really think that most American, I'm a Californian, so,
Right, I was going to say
do
that.
most Americans really
While we were driving here, I asked you, are you from the States? And you said, well, I'm from California.
Yeah, California.
So there's no one America, as you know. So it depends. There are many actors. Of course, the fossil fuel industry is very much in favor of Trump. They donated enormously to Trump during the campaign, and they want to have, what Trump is doing. There was a study by the Università di San Gallo in Switzerland, about investors in the US. They spoke to over 2,000 investment firms in the US. And what they found that there's a slight decline of their intentions to invest in the green economy. So there is some, if we try and imagine a business community as a whole, there are many aspects to it, but so there's still a lot of drive towards the green economy. It depends on how it turns out to be. Like those judicial battles, they're going to determine the environment. So overall, now there's still like a push. It hasn't been reversed. And also then in finance, a lot of financial firms now require ESG standards. And that's like something that is taken for granted now. So there's still a lot of force driving towards that direction. Maybe interesting could be the few data about electric vehicles in the United States. Now in the United States, it's really hard to have comprehensive data about the United States because in many fields there is no single central authority. Even voting in the United States is not calculated by like a central federal authority, but by the single states. Anyway, overall, now you have in the United States 1.4% of all vehicles that are electric, okay? So a very small percentage. In China, maybe the person who will speak about China will correct me, but that's what I found. I think it's interesting to compare it now. Now it's about 16%, so it's about 10 times as much. The electric cars trend is still growing, so predictions say that in 2024-25, electric cars in the United States could make up about 7 to 9% of the new cars that are sold, and it could even go beyond 20% by 2030. But that still has a lot to do with the environment, with the political environment, and so on. In China, we are already, more than half of the new cars are electric. So what I can certainly say, and this is very geopolitical, is that China has won the war on the green economy. And from what I understand, maybe the person who will speak about China will clarify it, the United States is not even in the game anymore in terms of what they really can represent as a technological force. Now the shift has moved to AI, so it's a different game, so it has to do with really fundamental changes in the technology. But so there is a context that still pushes towards the green economy, but the United States is very much behind.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we could probably keep talking for a long time about the complexities of the picture in the US, and of course it is very important as it is the world's #1 carbon emitter, but the tour is moving on. So thank you very much. A big round of applause, please, for Oliviero and sharing his insights. If the US has been the world's largest carbon emitter per capita, or is currently, Asia, a traditionally low emitter, has been catching up rapidly with recent decades of industrialization in China and India. But of course, as we've heard, China is changing dramatically in the last couple of years. So to talk about Asia and China in particular, I call back Chiara, who, by the way, you might want to stay here so you don't have to keep coming up and down, yeah?
I would prefer standing, but...
You can stand also. You can stand when you talk, but you can keep sitting here when you're done.
Yes, absolutely. So let's move very quickly to a second major key player in the green economy, the electrostate on the green route. That's how we have been calling China. And here are a few numbers to explain why. Of course, China is the first world emitter, as we all know, with 12 billion tons of CO2 produced in 2024 and a share of 32% of global emissions. His role in terms of historical climate responsibility is increasing very fast, and China is now the third country for historical responsibility after the US and the EU. As we all know, China is the major leader of green technologies. Today, 80% of solar panels and 60% of wind turbines and 50% of electric vehicles are produced in China. A very interesting feature of China model is electricity consumption. That's why we, and not only us, have been calling China an electro state, because the share of electricity in the energy consumption is very high, has reached 29%, and this is driving economic growth in China and the growth of renewable energy in the power sector in particular. And it's a very interesting feature that other countries should follow, considering that the electricity share in Europe is around 20% and the same is in the US. Last but not least, about fossil fuels, as we all know, China is a major coal supplier. 58% of global coal supply comes from China, therefore has very important interest in the coal supply chain as well. The overall situation is China. What you see on the left are targets and perspective up to 2030, which is the current formal NDC that China has presented at COPs. But of course, they are discussing new targets up to 2035, which is what is requested by the Paris Agreement for this COP30. So let's focus on the right hand side of the screen, which are what is relevant now. This is just announcements so far, but we'll see if they will become formal NDC. So a net emissions cut of 7 to 10% by 2035, and this is the first time that China is presenting a target about absolute reduction of emissions and not intensity of carbon. The second target is about the share of known fossil fuels in energy consumption that shall reach 30% in 2035. Of course, a target about renewables that should continue their incredible growth in China and reach 3.2 terawatt of solar and wind in 2035. Last but not least, the net zero target by 2060 remain, and experts think that it might even occur earlier if China continues as it is going. Why I'm saying this? Because what is happening in China is very interesting, and 2025 will likely be a pivotal year for China energy transition. The good news is that emissions have been declining steadily in the past months, and this might translate into either stable emissions or an emissions reduction in 2025. And this is happening while the economy is growing by 4.8%. So this is definitely a good news and a sign of decoupling of Chinese economy. Once again, the power sector provides mixed feelings because both solar and coal are expected to set records in 2025, and this is a clear picture of the complexity of the energy transition in China. But you can see how solar is increasing 2 to 3 times more than coal, so that's also a sign. The market for EV sales will continue increasing in China, and 1 in 10 cars in China are already electric. So the drove that China took on electric mobility is now evident. What is happening in China, and it's very interesting to see how this will turn in the upcoming months and years, is about the oversupply that green technologies are occurring in China, and how this will impact the green energy transition in the world. And China is also experiencing some change in supporting policy, some switch in tariffs, for example. So impacts for green growth are unforeseeable for now, but should be limited. I am concluding this introduction with a quote from President Xi Jinping when he announced the new possible NDC for China by 2035, and I'm reading: "Grid and low carbon transportation is the trend of our time. Despite some countries going against the trend, the international community should stay on the right track, maintain unwavering confidence, unwavering action, and undiminished efforts." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Now, the moment of truth. Is Professor Junming Zhu there somewhere? Hi. Oh, yes, he is.
Hi, yes.
Sorry. Hi, can you hear us and can you see us?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly and
Okay,
see
great.
both of you.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Junming Zhu, the Associate Dean of the School of Public Policy and Management at Tsinghua University. And as I don't know if you were able to hear the presentation by Kira talking about China's great strides in the green economy, I'd like to start by asking you really what is, I mean, China's a country that for many of us is very far away and that we don't have a lot of insight into. And I mean, the fact that China has embraced green policies and kind of gone for it so wholeheartedly, whereas in the US and even in Europe, we see a lot of questioning. I mean, I think it would be great if you could start by setting us a little bit of the kind of political and social context in which China has just seemed to really embrace the green transition with such gusto.
Yeah, of course. And thank you. Thank you for having me here, although it's remotely online. And also thank you for setting up the stage. I think these are the brilliant facts that you have paved the way for my my talk, and so I can skip some facts. Yeah. So in terms of green transition, I think the question here is very important because, well, we know that China has a strong ambition for the green economy, for the green transition, but equally important, I agree, that is to understand why such a big country ended up with such a green ambition, right? So the rationale, the geopolitical, the social economic rationale behind this transition is very important. So that's exactly my opening slides about. So if we take a few steps back from now, if we look back, for example, 20 years ago, you would see China as a typical underdeveloped country following the conventional model of economic growth, right? So this means that it used its competitive advantage for labor-intensive, resource-intensive productions with low value added. So long before China's manufacturing sector became the world's largest around 2010, so the famous World Factory, actually China, another indicator became the world's largest was almost more than 30 years ago from now on. In 1993, China's all kinds of comprehensive resource extraction measured in terms of an indicator called direct material input actually exceeded US, became the world's largest. Well, this explained how an underdeveloped country developed using its labor, using its resources, and using it not in a very a decent way to develop, right? So with not well-regulated industrial sectors and so on. And following that was the CO2 emissions and so on. And of course, that brought to us not only huge resource extraction and CO2 emissions became the world's largest, but also conventional pollution emissions, which caused huge damages to the public health and social welfare. And this is we can see that this is the cost to the economic growth, but also thanks to economic growth and human capital accumulation, which brought to us improved technologies and higher demand for the environment, which finally pushed the central government to have a strong dedication to pollution control. Well, still it's not a green economy, but rather a pollution control. But that's a strong dedication nationwide. And the central government even declared a war on pollution back in 2014. And following that was the establishment of a network of state-owned monitoring stations for more accurate data for air quality, for water quality, and so on. And emission reductions across all kinds of sectors. So on the right-hand side of my slide, you can see there is this flash animation that, for example, for PM2.5 concentration, it was getting worse and worse year by year since the 2000 until 2013. Well, the emission peaked in 2013 and reduced very rapidly in the following 4 years. And I think it's unexpected for almost all the Chinese during that time. Well, I'm not saying it's gone because still we have some smog days from year to year here in Beijing, but well, on average, you can see it's minimal compared to like 10 years ago. But that also comes with problem, right? So pollution reduction, it's good for the public health for everyone, but on the other hand, it's costly to the business. And on top of that, there are challenges for the economy. Well, for one thing, well, we have remaining problems to be solved, like climate mitigation, like biodiversity, and so on. But on the other hand, China is such a big country that internally there is huge disparity in terms of income across the country, right? So at least half of the country still has a strong desire for economic growth and higher income rather than higher regulations, which is also necessary for climate mitigation and so on, right? And for another, again, with a big economy, any transition is, well, difficult, right? So you end up with like turning around a big oil tanker, right? So it's not easy, and there are a lot of side effects with transition. So that means that how to achieve multiple and potentially conflicting targets. And of course, what you need is a green economy, green transition with all-inclusive, comprehensive transitions in many dimensions, as you have mentioned. And this is exactly the proposition of the Chinese government since 2020. And literally, the translation would be all-round green transformation of economic and social development. It first appeared in the central government policy as a guidance for the 14th five-year plan, and it appeared again in the 14th five-year plan, in the yearly documents, and again recently in the guidance for the 15th five-year plan. So the next 5 years from 2026 to 2030, and I think it's, well, since the topic is about uncertainties, but I think it's one of the biggest certainties here in China for the green transition. In fact, it's too popular that if you search in any search engine, well, of course in Chinese, that if you type economic and social development, so the second part of the phrase, any search engine will remind you that to fill out this whole expression, that the remaining part is all around green transformation. So that's a small example that it's been very, very popular in China. And shall I pause here or shall I continue with?
Yeah, I mean, you can continue if you want to. I mean, yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the interesting points, I mean, first of all, it's incredible to see that PM 2.5 map. I lived in Asia for a long time, and to kind of see those days when Beijing was like choking in pollution, which was such a huge topic, and to see how from that kind of concern about, you know, choking pollution and the terrible impact of human health, you've gone, you know, that has led to this push for green and the cleanup. It's really incredible, and gives me hope for India, the country where I lived for a long time. But I think it would be interesting to hear now, having, you've really gone to scale on a lot of green technology, but as Chiara mentioned, there's actually this concern about oversupply of green technology, and I wonder if you might talk about that and what the implications are of that, and the role that maybe China can play in also kind of promoting green technology globally, and maybe some of the obstacles that it's facing in doing that.
Of course, yes. Actually, it's, one of my slides is about the green technologies, and especially solar and wind. Yeah. But let me give you a brief overview of what green transition means in China. Last year, the State Council and the party, they jointly announced a notice about green transition. So basically, that's the general backbone of what green transition means here. So it includes 10 parts. Well, internally, you can see that there are 6 of them covering different sectoral dimensions about spatial planning, about production, consumption, energy sector, transportation, urban and rural development. So it's not only the clean technology, but it's actually all kinds of, when we talk about green transition, it's all kinds of the social, economic, the society. And there are also the remaining 4 parts. It's more of the supportive measures, including the policies, international collaborations, technological innovation, and efficiency and saving. So that's it. And spatial planning, it's easy. It's more of a state-led about zoning-based management of the ecosystems and their functions with national parks. Learning from the US experience, ecological security belts, and also finer county level ecological functions that the country wants to preserve at the county level. I think one of the biggest technological change is in the manufacturing sector. So when we talk about oversupply of technologies, probably it's more people want usually refer to the energy sector, but for the manufacturing sector, I think it still requires some new technologies. So first, as you mentioned before, that carbon emissions. So China set a target for peaking its carbon emissions by 2030. Which I think it's not a concern right now, because if you look at the manufacturing sector, well, many sectors they have already reached their peak, right? Some a few years ago, some already, but some maybe a few years to go. But it's not a concern right now. And what's been the most changing the new wave actually is further energy efficiency and pollution reduction across the industries powered by digitalization and AI powered technology. So for example, here in the middle, what you see is what they call 24-hour dark factories that with all the automation that smartphone production doesn't require people to process and doesn't even require lighting in the workshop. And also the similar technologies for AI powered technologies has been used in environmental enforcement. So conventional enforcement relies on on-site inspections. So the inspectors, they have to visit the plants, which cause disruptions to the business, right? So for a green economy, currently the idea is to reduce those disruptions to the business. So with more remote enforcement, with those all-inclusive vans and drones. And yeah, here is what we talk about with the probably oversupply. Yeah. So one of the facts is that China set a target for the installation of solar and wind, so renewable installation in 2030. But for good or for bad, the country has already achieved its 2030 target for renewable deployment last year, so 6 years in advance. Well, there's a lot of deployment, but I think the problem is how to integrate them into the grid. That's really a problem and a challenge for it. It requires a lot of storage, energy storage, requires a lot of smart design of the grid and so on. But combining those technologies with other aspects of the green transition, I think it's nice, right? With technology advancing in the factories, in transportation, and in other aspects, maybe oversupply would not be a problem. But what's more interesting, I think, here I would like to share is that with all those numerous practices, some creative ideas will emerge sooner or later. So on the right, what you see is that when people started to install solar panels in the desert, well, because they helped block the wind, block the strong sunshine, and because when you clean the solar panels, there'll be water drainage to the ground. The grass started to grow, right? So they turned the desert into the grassland. But when grass started to grow, they grow too long to cover the solar panel, and people found that it's a good idea to allow the herders to graze their sheep in those fields, so that it serves the due purpose. So that's, I think, one of the brilliant ideas you will see. There is also a combination of solar panels and fishing and crabs and so on. So a huge variety of new business models with industrial symbiosis. Urban and rural development, it's about accessibility, about green buildings, about the so-called smart city for climate resilience, and also for rural development, for ecological tourism, and so on. And green transportation, that's also what's been a huge for more electrifications and less coal, of course. And with the renewables, you can have a lot of more automations in the infrastructure. And also, of course, you need more infrastructure to plug in the electric vehicles and so on, and also some subways. And finally, I think I'd like to end with the last dimension of the green transition is that it's about consumption. Consumption is, I don't think the supply of technology is a challenge, but consumption side is probably the biggest challenge for the future, because as people get richer, right, so the standard of living will be higher, and which means usually, if you follow the conventional track, there will be more consumption, and more consumption means more environmental impact. And it's good to see that with the rise of the platform economy and numerous consumption activities, there are also, again, a lot of innovative ideas. So on the left, it's one story about the so-called Ant Forest project by Alipay. Alipay is one of the biggest transaction platforms in China, and Alipay encourages its users to grow virtual trees by increasing their low carbon activities, and the company will redeem the virtual tree into real tree planting in the deserts. So that's one story. Well, with huge users, basically almost all Chinese they use either the WeChat Pay or Alipay as the e-transaction. So that's a huge scale for encouraging low carbon activities with a gentle nudge. Well, on the right, it's also another the biggest second-hand transaction platform in China called Gufish or Xianyu in Chinese. Well, as you can imagine, here it shows that it has, registered users are 600 million and active users are still 200 million. So with huge basis of the users, they are not a promoting a circular economy, a recycling society, but also they encourage all kinds of flexible employment for inclusiveness and for gig economy. So that's also, I think, one of the very interesting thing to say, to combine the green and inclusiveness in a platform. So that's all what I want to share. But I think maybe one of the in the future the biggest challenge is not for the technology. We should always welcome green technologies, but rather it's how to change the lifestyle, because as Chinese gets richer, right? So the consumption will be higher, and the environmental impact. Well, so if we follow the older track, well, it will be higher, right? So which really requires a lot of cooperation.
Professor, thank you very much for a very fascinating presentation on one of the countries leading the way in green technology. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there and move on to our next stop on our tour, which is Europe. Chiara, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Let's move back home, I could say, to Europe, the historical leader of green economy. Just very quickly, a few key numbers. The most relevant one, I would say, is the one that you can see from the graph, which is the emissions reduction that Europe managed to reach since 1990 levels, which is a 37% reduction. And this happened together with an increase of GDP of 72%. That means that Europe, the European Union, I should say, it's the only big emitter to achieve a relevant emissions reduction since 1990 levels, like climate targets are asking to. We all know the role that Europe plays and the hardships that it's facing in terms of geopolitical context and energy transition. And this is also due to the fact that still 58% of the energy consumed in the European Union comes from import. And this translates into a bill that Europe has paid, for instance, in 2024 of 375 billion euros spent to import fossil fuels. The energy transition is speeding up fast in the European Union. Well, not fast enough, but definitely fast. And this we can see effects in particular in the power sector. Almost half of the electricity consumed in Europe comes now from renewable energy. So 47% is the share in 2024. And for instance, it is 34% in China and 24% in the US. Last but not least, perception about the green transition. 77% of EU citizens, this is from the last Eurobarometer, think that the costs of climate change are much higher than investments, and that means that decarbonizing is also convenient and not only necessary to face the climate crisis. Once again, expectations from 2025 are not easy, but I'm trying to give you some first estimate and glimpses from this year. One is about a record high that solar power reached in the EU. It was the first electricity source covering a full month in June 2025. And this is definitely a proof of the ramp up that renewables are reaching in the power sector. In terms of investment in green energy, the EU remains the third economic area after China and the US, and it's expected to invest almost $400 million in renewable energy grids and energy efficiency, and it's more than double what it was spending 10 years ago. The market for electric mobility is increasing again, not so much, but still increasing, and this is a very good news, especially after the stagnation that happened in 2024. Last but not least, some suggestions about how the EU might maintain its EU green leadership. To reduce the high cost of dependency from energy imports, Eurobonds and global minimum tax might be options on the table. This is a quick overview of what climate targets are happening. Once again, on the left, you see the targets from 2030, but what we are looking at now are targets up to 2035. So the new NDC that the EU is presenting at COP30, there isn't an official NDC yet, but there has been a statement of intent, which is a reduction, as you can see, between 66 and 72% from 1990 levels. The EU is also working towards the emissions reduction target that is being discussed in these hours by 2030, and actually the Council has just reunited. So we have the news as of yesterday or tonight. I don't know if...
For you all, just arriving. Unfortunately, I think they are not very good news. Unfortunately, Chiara, it's good because we are preparing the discussion for Belém here, like a pre-COP. We are giving all the numbers and the positions, so it's very important to know. But the news is that the Council of Environment Minister in Brussels, they met yesterday about this target that Chiara was saying, the 90% net emission cut. This was the main discussion. And on one hand, we have the positive theoretical news that they kept the 90%. So Europe will go with this target, but at the same time, they agreed on a flexibility by 5% of flexibility in carbon credits, international, plus 5% of flexibility in the national determined contribution, meaning 10% flexibility, and it's not yet clear how to measure and how to use it, and they will revise the European climate law in 2 years. So to our first perception, Chiara, and to all of you, is that there is a kind of, I wouldn't say backlash, but it's slowing down on the ambition. So you say, in the previous slide, you're saying, will Europe keep the leadership and on the climate action? I'm not that sure about this. So they will go to COP. Of course, this is a result of political situation in Europe. Of course, the debate is very high. But it doesn't seem that we go as Europeans to the COP with a strong position. And we have seen which is the China speed, you know. So good and bad, and I think more toward bad. I'm very sorry, Chiara. I didn't want to
ruin the party.
But the target is kept anyway.
Okay.
But flexibility, who knows what it is, we will see.
Because once again, this little word net before emissions is the issue on the table when we talk about climate targets. I'm just closing very quickly with a statement from the Prime Minister of Spain. To those who ask for dismantling climate policies, we humbly reply that the green agenda is one of the main boosts for competition, not an obstacle. We know it because this is what is already happening in the country. So.
Thank you. And now here to discuss in more detail the situation in Europe, we have Alessandra Zampieri, the Director of Sustainable Resources from the JRC at the European Commission. Alessandra, are you there? Yes, you are.
I am there. Good morning.
Hello. That's always the panic moment, is the person really there. As you've heard, we know that Europe has its very ambitious Green Deal and, as Chiara has outlined, made great strides in being a climate leader, but there is a discourse now about whether climate leadership is somehow eroding European competitiveness, whether, you know, whether the focus on the drive for green is hurting European industry, the economy. That's a discourse that's very alive here in Italy especially. So how do you assess the progress on the Green Deal and its challenges today?
Thank you very much, Amy, and thank you very much for inviting us. I found the discussion extremely interesting, and comparing different areas of the world is certainly something that's enlarged the discussion in democratic confrontations. Before we go and see how Europe is doing in implementing its policy, let's focus for 1 second on what the EU Green Deal means. The EU Green Deal is the policy that is the compass. We were speaking before about the compass that the European Union gave to itself to become, by 2050, the first climate neutral continent. And you can see at the heart, at the center of this slide, the 7 policy areas around the Green Deal. This policy, which is a bold transformative agenda to reach this objective of climate neutrality by 2050 is now being coupled with the policies on competitiveness, which follow the indications and follow the recommendations of Professor Draghi. So while the Green Deal dates back to 2020, now with 5 years of this policy, more recently this year it has been coupled with these three important objectives of closing the innovation gap, joint decarbonization and competitiveness, and reducing dependencies and increasing security. And this is the compass for Europe to reach its objective and also the way forward for growth and competitiveness. The Green Deal has always been a growth policy, and it is based on, it is aiming at the climate target, it is working on the environment, but the objective has always been to couple these objectives, this vision, with competitiveness and with growth. And these are also clearly explained, has been clearly explained by our President von der Leyen in the previous mandate, but also more recently in September in the State of the Union speech. She clearly explained that we stay the course of the Green Deal and that sustainability has to match with competitiveness, jobs, and this is to guarantee Europe's independence and its future. And we cannot think about these two these objectives coupled together, if we don't remember that one of the most important targets that we have, indicators that we have, saying that more than 50% of the global GDP is based on nature. So these things have to go together: competitiveness, growth, protection of the environment, and climate goals. Where are we? You asked me, Amy, where we are with the implementation of this Green Deal. Here there is a QR code. I invite all participants to access this study that we have issued as the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. We are the scientific and research and knowledge body inside the European Commission, and we have been put our scientists together to study, to decouple, to disentangle the Green Deal into various binding and non-binding targets. We have identified 154 of these targets, and we have been studying how these targets are being met, are being reached with the various policies in the European Union. And the results of this analysis that we have carried out is that 25% of the Green Deal targets are on track. So we are very well equipped to meet these targets. But there are 41 targets which require accelerated progress to meet the ambitions. And the European Union is equipped itself with more recent strategy, more recent proposals to accelerate on these targets. And there are 10% of targets that need to revert the trends, that need to really put more effort and accelerate and go faster in implementation of these targets. Now, a lot has already been achieved in Europe with the targets, and the previous presentation gave you a lot of encouraging, a lot of interesting figures on where we are in the implementation. Let me highlight the main achievement. First of all, we heard already the greenhouse gas emissions are decreasing in the European Union. They fell by 31% in the EU between the 90s and 2022. And we had a record here for this of 8% in 2023. So we see a significant, also recorded decrease of greenhouse gas emissions. Renewable energy now accounts for 22% of the EU energy mix. And this is a significant step in our way toward decarbonization. We also have adopted a circular economy action plan, and this is driving innovation in waste management, product design, and resource efficiencies. For example, the recycling rates for packaging waste are moving steadily towards the 70% targets by 2030. Investment in green technologies and sustainable infrastructure are creating jobs and they are fostering economic resilience. The bioeconomy sector is a dynamic driver for competitiveness with a value of up to 2.7 trillion euros when combined with services activities in 2023. And that year, biomass activities employed in the European Union 17.1 million people, which is around 80% of the EU jobs, and generating 863 billion euros in value added, which represent 5% of the EU GDP. So there is a growth and there is focus on these activities that are growing. But our report also reminds us that the road ahead is steep, and it also reminds that achieving the Green Deal's objectives require nothing less than a systemic transformation of our economy and of our society. If you look at the circular economy, it's one of the sectors which clearly needs acceleration. It's also one of the compelling insights from the Green Deal. A circular economy is not just recycling, it's really about rethinking how we design, how we produce, and how we consume. And it's also about closing the loop on resources, minimizing our waste and maximizing our values. And here again, let me mention what our President, Ursula von der Leyen, recently declared, that circularity and recycling go to the core of the European independence. Behind the raw materials, Europe must be in control of critical technologies that will shape our economy of the future. And also in terms of contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, we have an interesting data here that says that the extraction and processing of materials, fuels, and food account for over 50% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And therefore, we need to embrace a circular principle if we want to reduce emissions, but also if we want to decouple economic growth from the use of resources. And this is the way we are going to work to obtain, to reach these objectives, and also to foster innovation. We have the Circular Economy Action Plan, but the European Commission is also drafting and thinking about a Circular Economy Act that the Commission has announced will be adopted next year, which will include new initiatives in this field on batteries, cloud services, artificial intelligence, quantum, advanced materials, and many other sectors. We are already leading the way with initiatives like Sustainable Products Initiative, which aims to make products more durable, more repairable, and recyclable. But we must also accelerate in this field. For sure, it is one of the sectors where we need to work harder. We need to embed circularity into every aspect of our economy, from construction, manufacturing sector, agriculture, and energy, certainly. We spoke about the bioeconomy. This is the last slide to tell you where we are staying and to give you a snapshot of where Europe is standing in implementing its Green Deal and climate ambitions. And let's talk bioeconomy. We already gave you some figures. Bioeconomy is a very important part of the Green Deal. It leverages sustainable use of biological resources and processes to create sustainable solutions. Bioeconomy is not just about replacing fossil-based materials with bio-based ones. It's about reimagining our relation with the future. It really implies a transformation of thinking. Bio-based materials like the bioplastics and the biofuels can reduce reliance on non-renewable resources, and sustainable forestry and agriculture can enhance carbon sequestration while supporting rural economies. Advances in biotechnology can unlock new pathways for food security, healthcare, energy, and boosting the EU competitiveness, and also closing innovation gap. These are certain sectors where we can really advance on innovation and work with our startup and our economy stakeholders to advance waste management, biomanufacturing, bioremediation, energy, and agriculture. We need to create markets for sustainable and renewable feedstocks that can strengthen the supply chain and help meet the rising demand for the bio-based products, as envisaged in the upcoming EU bioeconomy strategy, which is about to be adopted in a few weeks by the European Commission, and the Circular Economy Act that, as I said, will be adopted next year. Yet, most circular bio-based technologies remain at an early stage, at the startup stage, and lack in the European Union some scaling up possibilities. And bridging this gap and boosting startups to scale demands coordinated research, streamlined regulation, and also demand stronger private-public partnership. For example, the 2024 EU communication on biotechnology and biomanufacturers calls for harmonized industrial standards to speed up innovation and market access while ensuring safety and sustainability. We have been supporting all this, not only the design of the Green Deal, the implementation of these policies, and also now evaluation of these policies to move forward in the future with our work, our research, and our data. And we will continue to do so also for future evolution of these policies. But in the meantime, I invite to visit, not only to download the report and read it, but also visit some of our websites. This one, for example, you have linked to the Knowledge Center on Bioeconomy, because we strongly believe that all these policies must be based on strong data and evidence, and we try to provide it, at least inside the European Commission, but also available to member states and stakeholders for designing these policies.
Alessandra, thank you very, very much for that excellent overview. I would suggest that all of you download the report so you can learn more about what is happening, and that Alessandra has showed us the QR code for, and learn more about what Europe is doing and its progress on the Green Deal. And now we turn to the last continent on our whistle-stop global tour, and that is Africa. So we have Chiara here to start off presenting us with some data.
Yes, we are so very glad that Africa has been introduced in this session as a key player for green economy, because it definitely is the future, or at least one of the key players in the future of green economy. Once again, I'll look at some key numbers. First one is, of course, about population. 1.5 billion people live in Africa, and this is already more than Chinese population. When we talk about Africa, of course, we need to come to talk about climate responsibility, because African countries only contributed to 3% of historical CO2 emissions, but they are bearing most of the impacts already from climate change. For instance, this estimate about 50% of excess disease mortality, for climate change in 2050 will occur in Africa. Emissions per capita are in Africa still very low compared to other economies. It's just 2.2 tons per capita, 3 times less than the global average and 8 times less the US. Africa is also a home to biodiversity. 25% of global biodiversity is in this continent. When we talk about population and the energy transition in Africa, we also need to remember that Africa is also in the middle of the energy industrialization. So far, 600 million people still in Africa do not have access to electricity. So it's not just a matter of green electricity, but it's first of all a matter of electricity as a whole. What to expect from 2025 and beyond? All eyes are looking at Africa once again, first because of population trends. 1 in 4 people in 2050 will be African. Also because Africa is a key player in terms of resources. For instance, 60% of the world's best solar resources are located in Africa, and also huge critical materials reservoirs are in Africa as well and are essential for green economy. latest trends show that imports of solar panels have been surging in Africa, and this has brought the International Energy Agency to increase the renewable energy forecast for Africa by 25%. I'm just recalling that for the US there has been a decrease, while for Africa there has been an increase. When we discuss about climate responsibility, we also discuss about financial needs that African countries are demanding to the industrialized world. They are estimated for adaptation in $61 million per year up to 2030. And this is 4 times more than what is already happening, so there definitely need to be a ramp up. Africa's ambition is to redefine its role in the global transition and is positioning already itself as a hub for solutions, especially in the energy transition. And I'm just closing again with another quote. This is from Ethiopia's Prime Minister and also Nobel Prize Abiy Ahmed, that says, "We are not here to negotiate our survival, we are here to design the world's next climate economy." And this occurred at the 2nd African Climate Summit last September.
Thank you very much, Chiara. So as we've heard, Africa has a very low historic responsibility for carbon emissions and yet is often seen as one of the continents worst impacted by global climate change. Obviously, a continent of 1.5 billion people, if it follows the same industrialization models that China had gone through and that India has gone through and that the West has also gone through in the past, they will be adding significantly to the climate burden. But Africa is trying not to go in that direction. And to discuss that, we have Davinah Milenge Uwella, who is from the African Development Bank and is going to give us an overview of what is happening on the continent. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, and thanks again for inviting us for the first time to this Ecomondo gathering. Well, as the Africa Development Bank, we've been doing development on the continent for the last 60 years. So we come with a lot of experience on what can be done, the opportunity, and really we put the dividend on building community. That's why we're here. I saw earlier on the maps of Ecomondo engagements and the little blobs in the north of Africa. We really want to push it down below the Sahara, because there, as you say, today 1.5 billion people with growth potential to about 1/3 of the world's population when we get to 2050. So if I can get my slides moving, maybe we can start the conversation. And I think we did very well on the headline numbers. If you can see very well in terms of the potential, the solar belt. We have 10 terawatts of solar potential, 60% of the world's solar potential on this continent. And then we have, and this is just on renewables, we have geothermal, as you can see, 15 gigawatt of potential, wind 110, hydro 350 gigawatts. And then we have the last arable land, 65% of that. We have green jobs. The previous EU speaker talked about circular economy and all that. So this is a continent where we could do good by nature. I think that should be my headline statement. We've gone through where it has happened, where they're retrofitting, but we can do good with the resources that we have as a global community. This is not a competition of who has what. We can do good with these resources. And this is to speak to the private sector, that there is markets, there is money to be made, and equity to be made. So with those headline figures, let me just dive into what we can speak about in terms of opportunity. The earlier slide mentioned the lack of energy access. There's 600 million people that live without access. Now, our bank, the African Development Bank, and the World Bank have come up to that challenge to halve that number. And these are not just numbers. These are women that are not dying of indoor pollutions. These are surgeons that are able to perform surgeries because of access to electricity. And with that comes new opportunities for the private sector. So clearly, as you can see, maybe if you could just look at the status there, there is 55 billion pledged when the program was launched. There is already Africa's largest patient capital on distribution renewable energies that is at 1 billion. And there's already 29 national compacts that are put together business plans on how to do this. So there is already a business catalog on how this can be done, and it's ready. So really what is needed right now is a global engagement to go behind this, whether it is through development banks such as ourselves, or DFIs, or donors and philanthropists, and the bulk of the private sector, because ultimately we need a future for our generations tomorrow. And if we're going to have that, we need to start to engage in these opportunities. The next one is on green jobs. And at the African Development Bank, we started a challenge called Youth Adapt, really looking into the population dividend and capturing those innovations that they've done and rewarding them. And so far we have 41 enterprises in 20 countries that have created 11,000 jobs, 61% of those being women, and 7 million has been mobilized. What this tells us is this is a continent that is teeming with opportunities in terms of innovations. You might have read somewhere where when the mobile communication started, it really took off exponentially on the continent because of the demand, because of the markets teeming with opportunities. And so there is a lot of opportunity to start with the innovation and the youth dividend that the continent has. Third, I really want to drill on nature, because we are here in the Green Economy Conference. Much as there is opportunities both in the belt of, at the base of the Sahara, where we have that solar radiation, there's also what is created, what is known as the Great Green Wall, to kind of stop the desert moving southwards. And so along the countries that are at the base of that Sahara, we have 11 countries. In that program is a program that aims to build I think it's 8,000 miles of kilometers across the 11 countries. And of course, it will restore 100 million of hectares of degraded land and 250 million tons of CO2, accompanying that being that there will be green jobs. The next one is the Congo Basin. That is also driving a lot of value. It has valued at 1.15 trillion in terms of ecosystem services, whether it is around fisheries, timber, and all the values that come with the forest. But it's the second in terms of absorbing CO2 next to the Amazon. So there is opportunities to grow that. To ensure that that Congo Basin, that is one of the lungs of the world, that is not destroyed as the population grows. Now I wish to speak to the circular economy again, because the EU has been very invested in this program, that we can do good. The circular economy has a good nexus between the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the climate benefits, especially the goal on clean consumption and production. And so at the African Development Bank, we started what is a dedicated circular economy trust fund, because we believe that meeting communities where they are. To date, when you go to our markets, for some of you who've been to Africa, you find all sorts of innovations in our markets. These are all opportunities that drive resources, that drive inclusive development, because people are involved and they're using resources that are very accessible to them. So we're looking at developing national circular economy roadmaps so that there is a policy framework, and then also starting business incubation programs. I'm happy that in this space we're also having exhibitions that are related to this. So I will be gladly sharing knowledge on how this can be partnered. Then we also host what is called the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which the EU Commission is a member, as a strategic member. Let me also appreciate that the European Commission did support the development of the first Africa Circular Economy Action Plan, which was launched a few months back in July. Now, the idea is that, especially around food waste, that we can create models that would ensure that we don't have post-harvest loss. Because you have an issue where you have hunger and abundance. And so managing that through communities coming together, bringing on resources, because traditionally, Africa has a way of managing or traditional systems of food waste. But when those push for urbanization and modernization, all those indigenous practices kind of were left aside. So the idea is, how do we bring those with modern practices and innovations, especially with the AI coming full stream, to ensure that we can use those systems to preserve the biodiversity, and especially around food waste. And of course, the plastic challenge. Plastic has a lot of politics around it, but for us, it's polluting the oceans and the landscapes. So ensuring that we have recycling around plastic packaging has great value. And of course, e-waste. We have, on the continents, it's a 3.2 billion opportunity. So there is opportunities in the circular space to do better by nature and to create jobs. And to us, as the African Development Bank, that is a winning solution. I'll give a bit of investment opportunities in adaptation, and I won't go deeply into them, but just to say, we have in terms of water, and these are large programs. The AAAP there is the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program. It's a 12 billion program between ourselves and the Global Center on Adaptation, and it looks at sectors that are very priority in terms of building adaptation. The next one is an infrastructure, the port of Banjul in the Gambia, that was made resilient. And as you can see, the 128 million total investment was made resilient because of that intervention. Now, my slide here is on what needs to be done to deal with the climate flows and really looking at the climate investment opportunities. Let me just say that as the world grapples with the regression of multilateralism or global community, on the continent, all African countries, 54 of them, have signed the Paris Agreement. There is an African Union Heads of State Committee on Climate Change, meaning that of all the things that we don't have, we don't lack political commitment on climate action. So then we have the climate change fund for the low-income countries, and this is under the Africa Development Fund. Let me thank Italy being very involved in this engagement as well, so that 37 of the low-income countries can access concessional financing and grant financing to deal with these issues. When we just had the news of the cyclone that hit Jamaica, that disseminated Jamaica. When we had the cyclone hit Mozambique, in one hitting alone, $2 billion worth of value was lost. And so that level of destruction for a continent that is at 3%, 4% of global emission, some climate justice need to come to play in this. And so we really need to look at this as survival for humanity. Now, on the below deck is what we can do in terms of the vehicles and instruments that the bank and its partners have put in place. I'll speak to what is called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa. This is a 10 billion vehicle to mobilize resources, and these are structured ventures on how it could be done right. So in terms of public resources, private sector resources, these are ready programs. Same with Africa 50. It has very targeted interventions and a lot of it on project development. So oftentimes the African story is not so much on reality but perception. So risk is often at perception. But once, I guess, maybe like Hotel California, you get in and you get stuck because of the good opportunity. It's stuck in a good way because it has resources and potential to doing good on your investment. So these two vehicles are really engaging in terms of if you really want to engage with Africa, and as the African Development Bank, we are very invested in them. So my last is a call to action. One, that Africa has a good case for the green economy. As I say, we have the political will and we have the resources to match. Second, we have ready partners in terms of vehicles to work with. We have, I say, Africa 50, the Green Infrastructure, and the African Development Bank, which together with the other multilateral development banks, we have our climate agenda going. So really, there's no excuse to that. Three, we have the population that is going to be tomorrow's market. So this is where you want to project for your future engagement. And then fourth is we have to do right by nature. We have the circular, and as the EU speakers say, we really need to invest in the bioeconomy. So I will close by saying, please, I heard there's a big delegation from Cote d'Ivoire, one of the countries that were invited. Please visit with them, reach out to what is there in terms of the continent that is going to generate the resources that we need for the global transition. Thank you very much.
Davinah, thank you very much for that powerful presentation. A continent with the political will, with the urgent need and the willingness to cooperate with partners, teaming with opportunities, and visit Davinah, meet her while she's here to learn more and talk about future for collaboration. I hope you've enjoyed this global tour, and now we
Thanks
hand
very much.
it
And
back
applause to Amy Kazmin. She's been great in the moderation. Thanks very much, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks to all of you. Thanks.
Thanks to all the panelists.
Oliviero, thanks very much.
Okay.
And we will check in the next months what's going to happen and see if our project, it's very difficult to project the future, but it's also very interesting to see what happens. So thanks very much. So now, please don't go away and stay, because this is the most important moment of the whole week, because we're going to do a game together with you. And it's not only a game. The winner of this game will win a trip to Maldives Island paid by Ecomondo. They still don't know it, I just decided now. With an electric boat, of course, zero emissions. So we know that there are many international delegations around here, so we want to know how much we are prepared about the knowledge. So we do a Mentimeter. Prepare your phones, and let's start with this. And we know who's going to be the winner, who takes all the right answer to this question. First of all, the first question. First of all, let me ask. These are you. Okay. People entering the Mentimeter, I see your faces very clearly. We have already, I think also people also connected online can enter, I think. Is it right? But they will not win any trip to Maldives. It's only people in here. Is there anybody from Mexico here? Okay, so you maybe will not answer some of the question, maybe one of the question. Okay, I think we can start even if people is recording. And the first question, this is the answer. Give me the question. Don't go to Google because you have seen already something about what we're talking about. There is a secret cam checking your... Okay, so which is the recycling rate in Mexico of PET, so the most used plastic for packaging bottles, between Mexico, okay, country Mexico, 13, 64, 42, 27. Please go and tell us what you think and think about the Maldives. Okay. Okay. It's so most of you say 27. What is the Mexico friend saying? Okay. But I think you are quite prepared because the answer here is this one. It's very interesting. 64% of recycling, national PET recycling rate in Mexico has already been reached. And this is very much in line with the results of the European most advanced countries. So green economy in some countries and circular economy in some countries in some sectors is going very well already. Okay? Let's go to the second one. Maybe Oliviero said something about this in his speech before, but after Trump's climate policy, which has been the effect of USA policy on UK decarbonization targets. So because it's very important to see whether this backlash of USA is having impacts on some countries in terms of the national NDCs officially. So UK decided to interrupt the 2030 targets or to have lower targets and by 20% lower, or to increase the ambition of climate action. You are right, because Oliviero said that there was a strong push from USA, and of course there was a big debate, but it seems like officially the carbon budget delivery plan published on 29th October has reaffirms UK government commitment to fully decarbonize electricity supply and reduce greenhouse gas emission. If you go and see the report, please go, you will see how much this has an impact on UK's economy in terms of job and in terms of growth. This is very interesting. Last, so you are There are some of you who are really matching the first position. Turkey. The Turkish biodiversity, you know, biodiversity is in trouble everywhere. We have lost already 20% of biodiversity all over the world. How can we consider the situation in Turkey? Is the Turkish biodiversity extremely rich, on average like other countries, or poor and in danger? And correct. This is one of the good numbers in Turkey. It's exceptionally rich because they have this different topography, includes mountains, coast, and steppes, and 10,000 plant species and 8,000 animal species. So it is most entirely covered by 3 of the world's 34 biodiversity hotspots. So Turkey can be one of the natural capital bank in our planet. So thanks very much for this. Maybe you can sit, I don't know, maybe if some of you want, we will let you know who is going to the Maldives, which other person. We will match and do some couples for the tour. And now we have something very interesting, because maybe, I'm sure that you know Jeffrey Sachs, the professor of Columbia University. He is one of the most expert persons in the world about climate, about geopolitical situation. He also worked for the SDGs and also worked in many. So we interviewed him because he is going now to the COP 30, so he couldn't be with us. But we interviewed a few days ago about what we can expect about decarbonization and the COP and the green growth, and see what Jeff is telling us.
Thanks very much for being with us in the States General of the Green Economy. It's really a pleasure for us. You've been with us already many times, so we really feel very linked to you. The first question is about climate and decarbonization, of course, and we met in 2015. In 10 years, it seems that instead of reducing emissions, we even increased them. So it seems like we have lost a lot of time in spite of the Pope and in spite of the Paris Agreement. Why?
Two things did happen. The fossil fuel producers, and especially the United States, increased their fossil fuel production, their exports as well, and that means that global emissions have continued to increase. But the second thing that's happened is the dramatic acceleration of the climate change itself. We have a doubling of the rate of warming that is taking place on the planet. Between 1970 and 2010, the warming was at a rate of about 0.18 degrees Celsius each decade. Now it is more than 0.3 degrees Celsius per decade. And the shock is that by now, we actually exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit that was agreed as the main target in Paris. We have overshot what we hoped to stop. We are above 1.5 degrees Celsius warming on Earth compared to the pre-industrial temperature. We see the effects all over the world. We see that we're reaching tipping points, including the possibility of a many-meter rise of sea levels because of the destruction of the ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland. We see tipping points being reached for the rainforests that could catapult them into mass drying, a die-off, a release of carbon from these rainforests, and turning them into grasslands in the Amazon and in other rainforest regions. Those are just a couple of the tipping points that we're reaching. So the fact of the matter is this has not been a successful 10 years, except in one regard, and that is the cost of zero carbon energy has gone down significantly. We can thank China a lot for that, by the way. Falling prices of photovoltaics, of wind turbines, of batteries at all scales, of zero carbon energy or power grids, electric vehicles, the hydrogen economy, all are at much lower cost than 10 years ago and much lower in most cases than was foreseen 10 years ago. So we have the ample opportunity to make the big transformation if we choose to do so.
Thanks. So there are still hopes to get decarbonization and maybe try to be in line with the IPCC scenario if we push and invest on this technology, I assume. This is very important for us. We cannot avoid talking about United States and the new Trump direction for climate. Do you think that climate represents the voice of the Americans for climate, or is just the voice of particular fossil fuel lobbies? And we know that you meet many head of state. Do you think that on climate they are scared by Trump positions and they refuse to get ahead, or is just a typical American point of view?
What Trump has done, standing at the podium of the UN General Assembly in September and declaring that climate change is a hoax, first exposes his recklessness and his foolishness and his ignorance. What he says isn't necessarily his view. We all know he's driven by lobbying, by showmanship, by grandstanding, by politics. But it might be his view. It might be that he's that ignorant. But the fact of the matter is the federal government of the United States is completely in the wrong direction, opposed by the American people who overwhelmingly want climate action, and opposed, in fact, by the states of the United States, which are taking climate action. And that is states led by Democrats and states led by Republicans. So Trump is deranging our federal government policy, but he's not reflecting the views of the American people. He's not reflecting the actions at the state level. He is hindering the effective transformation of the US economy at the national level because we need a national power grid, for example. There are many investments taking place in solar and wind power that effectively are stranded right now because we don't have the grid to transmit this zero carbon power. And that, by being an interstate need, really does require federal action. Now, the other thing that Trump has done is hand the technology leadership over to China. It's like a unilateral surrender. The United States is saying, okay, we don't do electric vehicles, we don't do photovoltaics, we don't do wind power. That's all for you. And handing it over to China, which says, thank you very much. We are now the large producer. Where is Europe in all of this? Well, that's also a very interesting point. First, Europe is extremely vulnerable to these climate changes that are taking place. This is the first point. Second, Europe was once in the lead of the green agenda. The lead. It was inspiring the whole world. It was pushing China. It was telling other countries, do this. But now, I'm sad to say, Brussels is much too much focused on warmongering. It should be focused on the green economy for Europe's economic prosperity, its global leadership, and its climate safety. So Europe should be saying, we're not going the Trump way, that's crazy. We will join hands actually with China. Our global gateway of the European Union and China's Belt and Road Initiative should be partners to make Eurasia transform into a green, decarbonized economy. This is a fantastic growth opportunity for Europe if Europe gets it. Unfortunately, Brussels is so completely beholden for some reason, maybe just psychological, to Trump, that they go beg for Trump's blessing when Europe should have its own green technology in partnership with other parts of the world that are going in the right direction.
Yeah, you're right. The Green Deal we had, it was seen as a model for development and for the future, for economy and jobs and investments, and now it's being criticized even by some internal governments in Europe, more nationalist, or that want to protect instead to expand for the future.
I used to go around the world after 2015, especially 2018, 2019, 2020, saying, look to Europe, it's leading. European Green Deal, yes. Partner with Europe, European companies. You know, Europe had the lead. I met at the UN at one point with European senior diplomats, and I said, your green diplomacy is Europe's ticket to worldwide success. But then, I'm sorry, but Brussels lost the beat on this. And it's not the people of Europe, it's...
You're right.
It's Brussels, and it's weird because it really sets back Europe's interests if it doesn't realize that the European Green Deal was the leading edge for economic development, for jobs, for investment, for growth, as well as for climate safety.
You're right. The latest survey says that 70% even more Europeans want climate policies, want to invest on green economy, want to be the leader in the world. So the European people are towards this direction. So it's really...
I have a very practical suggestion, by the way.
Yes, please.
Europe has identified 800 billion euros available. They want to use it to buy US military goods. Are you kidding? Okay, you've identified 800 billion
Yes, that's
euros.
great, isn't it?
Make Europe the best 21st century, most advanced green infrastructure, green technology, invest in partners around the world, join up with the Belt and Road Initiative, expand the global gateway. And when you say, oh, but Mr. Sachs, where's the money? I say, well, you have 800 billion euros you've already identified. And they say, yes, but what about Russia? And I say, it's a lot cheaper. Make a phone call, sit down and negotiate an outcome. You don't need 800 billion euros. You need a Zoom call. And then you can also have the most modern, green, digital, safe economy in the world.
Is there at least one good news that we could expect as a result from the COP?
Well, the US won't be there, so it won't be so practiced.
It's going to be easier.
There can be unanimity of the countries that are there. Brazil has said that it's going to launch some important initiatives to save the world's rainforests. Let's hold them to that. You know, the oil industry is circling above the Amazon itself, which is not a good thing. We don't need Amazon oil, that's for sure. What we need is standing rainforests that are protecting the planet, protecting the people that live in these great forest regions of the world. So I'm counting on Brazil to follow through on what it said, which is that this is a protect the world's rainforests COP, because that would be a major contribution for the world's well-being.
Okay, let's cross fingers. Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks for being with us.
Of course, always a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, thanks very much. I think Jeffrey was, like always, very provocative. Maybe we could discuss about some of what he said, but I think the main point about Europe is very interesting. So, I know that now we go into the finance and companies and business panel. First of all, I would like to welcome on the stage Paloma Abagadote, Director of EU Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency. Please come with us. And Marco Duso, Head of Global Climate Change of UI. And we are very glad to have with us for the first time Nino Tonchetti Provera, founder of Ambienta, one of the most important asset manager and finance of green. Hello, Nino, can you hear us? Sorry, we cannot hear you. Can you speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can I ask you
Okay.
just one favor? If you can stay there for 10 minutes because Paloma has to go to a meeting. Do you have 10 more minutes? I'm very sorry for the delay.
No, don't worry, but okay, I'll be back.
Okay.
It's fine.
No, no, you can stay with us if you want. You can follow the discussion, but we'll let first Paloma tell us a bit more. Of course, not about the political view of Jeffrey Sachs. I think you could say many things. It would be great to have a discussion of what he said, but you are at the head of a very important agency because we all are very familiar with Horizon, with LIFE, with all the funding for research, and it's thanks to this agency that this green economy in Europe can be implemented in reality. So can you tell us more about the situation now and the future situation about this funding? Yes, maybe it works.
Does it work? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that, after this intervention, well, maybe I don't know if everybody knows what we are doing, but we are one of the financing arms of the European Union. We have been established by the European Commission, so we are part of it. And we have always, concentrated in supporting the European Green Deal since 2021, and we continue to support the green growth and the decarbonization of industry. And, after what he has said, I have to say that independently of, different movements or also this kind of maybe troubled waters, green economy and sustainable economy is high on the agenda. It's high on the agenda from the policy perspective, and it's high on the agenda from the European Union budget. Because we believe that, investing in clean technologies is investing in the economy and at the same time, protecting the environment. And, and I would like to reinstate that, our President von der Leyen has said that the future of clean technologies should stay in Europe. And also for doing so, we need a real circular economy that reuses, that recycles our materials. And in line with our statements, we continue to support, sustainable growth. And that's why the financing from the European Union has always been supporting those companies investing in clean technologies, clean energy, sustainable transport, circular economy. So what we have currently now as funding, our agency has been delegated 7 programs, and I would like to mention 4. You have just mentioned Horizon, the most famous one. So we have Horizon Europe, that today has a budget of nearly 100 billion euros. In the agency, we are concentrating on energy, so clean energy, sustainable transport, climate measures, with around 11 billion. 11 billion. Yeah. We also have, since 2021, the Innovation Fund. The Innovation Fund is basically a fund to support business and industries to invest in clean energy, but also to bring to the market technologies that will help the industry to decarbonize. An example, so you can visualize what we are financing. For example, we are supporting now in Italy a project which is about sustainable chemical recycling, by which the company is using a technology to recycle plastic waste that otherwise...
It cannot be recycled physically, materially.
Exactly. Yes. We also have the LIFE program, running until the end of 2027, as the others, which is basically, supporting the environment and the policy, environmental policy, but we are supporting circular economy, so the water use, energy, clean energy, affordable energy, circularity, And for example, we have very important projects, but we also have a small project. We are supporting a project which is recycling used shoes and scraps to make new footwear. So that's another example.
Sorry, but what Jeffrey was saying, I think, exactly like this. The Green Deal and the money that EU invested for research and innovation was the center, has been so far. So we have presented Europe as the leader, historical of the green economy.
And will continue to be.
It will continue to be.
Continue to
okay,
be.
very good.
Will continue to be. So finally, just for the sake of finishing, and the fourth fund that we have is the European Maritime, Fisheries and Agricultural Fund, maybe small in size, but also very relevant for the ocean and the blue economy. And we are also, financing projects like using seafood biowaste to create sustainable packaging, or producing eco-friendly, aquaculture gear. So we have large-scale projects, small-scale projects within the circular economy that we are supporting from different funds.
How much has been the investment on this in the past?
Well, in the agency, we have received until 2027 more than 65 billion.
Okay.
With billion euros to invest in all these areas. I mean, we are also covering, energy grids and transport, but always within a green part. For the future, that's also important. The Commission works in a 7-year cycle. The Commission recently proposed in July this year what we call the budget, the multinational financial perspectives. And we have proposed, because then it has to be approved by the Member States and the European Parliament, to spend 2 trillion euros, out of which we want a 35% target on climate and environment.
This is a very important number. So we're talking about 2 trillion euros, 45% to climate action.
35%, so which is 750
around 800 billion euro. Okay.
Exactly. And within this, we are proposing a very strong Horizon Europe program, which will almost double the size that we have today. So very important. Very much linked to the deployment. So we are proposing a new program which will group other programs we have in the past and many other measures that we didn't use to finance in the past, which is called the European Competitiveness Fund.
Yes.
And this is to support, the business and the industry to stay in Europe. And within this, we will have a policy window that has been proposed to call, the clean transition and the decarbonization of industry, where it will have around 400 billion euros. So we are not just, I felt a little bit like when he said 800 billion for defense. I don't know what is the amount, but I can tell you that we have many, we have a long and strength to continue in our green way, and we will continue to do so, supporting, all these people who are here and where maybe sometimes they have difficulties to find private investors, because our focus is also to help all those projects which are risky, which are sometimes not commercially viable.
We couldn't
and that it could not be financed, in the market, because for the market we have other entities like Ambienta, bankers, equity, that they're ready to put the money. So ourselves, we try to
to cover the remaining part.
To cover the remaining part, or even when they don't find this kind of, even private, and they have to use their funds, and only with our funds they will make this project. So that's very important.
So first of all, good luck, because I think this was a kind of, Jeffrey has been he always admired Europe, and he was always, so he said, are you still keeping the lead? And we say, yes, we are keeping the lead. But that sum that he was saying, he was referred, I think, to Mario Draghi, when he said, we need 800 billion, where can he find it? So yesterday in the States General, in the opening, we said that maybe Eurobonds, maybe some global tax, something that can boost your funds also, because we need more money. If we see the investment of China, we need more money for Europe, okay?
No, well, definitely, I'm talking now about the budget, which, is in the European Union, managed by the European Commission, but we are also working with other financing arms, like the European Investment Bank, that they are working very closely with the European Commission. So it's true that sometimes it's difficult to find the money. We will see, the Commission is proposing other ways of financing the European Union budget more than the contribution by the member states. We will see what it comes final. But I think that, I want to reinstate that we will continue to support the green economy. We will support the clean technologies and the clean practices, because we consider that, being sustainable is not incompatible with being competitive.
Thanks very much. Can I make two last questions to you? The very first, some companies told me that there are companies having problems in getting access to fundings. It's not easy to win an Horizon project finding. So is this a challenge that can be somehow solved, or?
Well, it has always been a challenge, because sometimes they find that, it's difficult to navigate with so many different programs, with so many...
The compass, like we did the morning.
With so many different rules, with many different co-financing rates. So for the next generation of programs, what we have done is first to reduce the number of programs. We used to have 56 programs. Now we will have just 16, okay, but it's a big effort on our side. We are also, it's being used, but I think that we will have to work more in where we have one single portal where everybody can just find information in one place. It should, in the past, used to be scattered all over the place. So we are we are working on that to have a portal that today exists, but we will make it better in order that companies will find information in a more simple way. And we also are working what we call harmonizing rules. So they will not have to navigate, with this program, this is what they have to take care of. And for the other program, there are different rules. No, we won't. We have a single book.
This is a good news.
Yeah.
And Italians love very much the LIFE program. We have loved it very much for not only Life Nature, but Life for, so now we see, I've seen that there are some initiatives by the Italian regions and the other stakeholders to ask you, not you in person, but to ask the Commission to not integrate it into Horizon and to keep it with the same amount of money and not to reduce this. What can you say about this? We are not recording this. We are recording this, but we will not officially launch.
No, I can record this as well. This goes a little bit in connection with the effort of the Commission to reduce the number of programs. Okay. So, from 56 to 16.
So, simplify it.
Simplifying this. So what we have done is that we have always recognized that life has been very important for the support of the environmental and climate policies, that the type of business and activities that we are financing through life are critical for our competitiveness, are critical for the, for our environment, and therefore we will continue to finance those. So that's what I wanted to confirm, that people should not be scared because some people came, we no longer have funding. No, this is not true. What we have done is that, because we have created the European Competitiveness Fund, we have grouped most of the activities related to clean energy, affordable energy, and circularity, including the use of water, air, waste treatment, so all these activities are going to be financed under the famous policy window, which is the decarbonization of the industry and the clean transition or clean economy.
Okay.
So these are going to be financed under there, and as I said, the program has 400 billion euros. So meaning that there is a lot of money there. Maybe there will be even more money for this type of activities in the future. And then the environmental activities will be part of another program, which is the national and regional partnerships, and therefore they're also receiving funding. So what I want to say is that whether we will not keep the brand live,
but we will keep it.
There is life after life.
Thanks very much, Paloma, for your speech. We know you have to go, but we support the increase of the budget for EU and for your agency. So thanks very much. Nino, are you there? I cannot see you. Maybe I ask the. Okay, thanks for having waited for so much. First of all, Nino, Paloma said about the private investments, because now we spoke about the European investment. Can I just make, you're managing billions of euro in green technology since many years. So can I ask you just a personal question? When and why have you decided to invest in this field that now we call green economy? And the second question, and I leave the floor to you, is this worth, in spite of the backlashes, in spite of the criticism, or not?
But listen, I wanted to, since I was a child, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And to be entirely honest, I crossed the environmental trajectory by coincidence. I was at university, it was 91, and I wanted to be hired by McKinsey. It was the hardest challenge possible, and to have a possibility, I decided to do a thesis about something nobody knew anything about, which was environmental trends. And since 34 years, progressively, I have understood that regardless of all the ethical, whatever concept, this is the biggest revolution in the history of the economy. It's going to last the next few centuries, because it's going to take a long time to find the balance between what humans need from this planet and what this planet can cope with. And so progressively, I first became an entrepreneur by launching businesses, and then I wanted more money because I wanted to do more things. And if you want money and you don't have it, you need to ask third party. That's why Ambienta was born 18 years ago. And I think that progressively we became probably the global leader in investing in this field.
And we are particularly proud as Italians that we have this, and start with this initiative that now is global, but it started from Italy. So what do you think about the situation? We spoke about uncertainties, we spoke about USA change of direction, we spoke about many difficulties and people attacking the green economy, people criticizing this, but from the finance point of view, you are of course are an expert, and you speak with many people around the world, entrepreneurs and finance people. Which is your perception of this particular time?
But listen, let's have an historical perspective. Finance discovered the green kind of 20 years ago. At the beginning, it was called clean tech, which was kind of trying to replicate in the environmental area what had been successfully done in the tech internet era. Then the United Nations published the SDGs, which were very general principles, but some people pretended to transform them into an investment strategy. Then some others created the ESG acronym, that to me is just how to manage a company in a more civilized way, regardless of what the company does. But many people try to transform that as well. Then it went even more theoretical, impact, purpose, etc., etc. Progressively in these 20 years, all allocators, investors, pension funds, insurance, banks, families, globally started to invest into this trend more and more and more. Now, 20 years later, let's see what happened. we invested all together, liquid, illiquid, private markets, public markets, something that my best guess is 400 trillion. I could be wrong. It could be 300, 200, 500. But we are talking about an amount of money which is huge. I mean, with 400 trillion, I can build a new planet, okay? Just to make things clear. Where did this money go? Because of all that SDG, ESG, impact, purpose stuff, my best guess is 80%, could be 75%, but the vast majority of that money...
That much?
75, 80% of the money went into things that have nothing to do with green. Education, healthcare, wellness, gender diversity, all very nice things, and actually in some cases very good investment. But I think that any human would understand that they have nothing to do with green. If we look at what happened into the green area, made exception to the money that went into very plain vanilla investment, which is the renewable infrastructure. I done my first wind farms in '99. That's a very plain vanilla. You invest, you have 9-10% IRR. It's fine. The vast majority, 99% of the money, went into developing new solutions. Now, developing new environmental solutions, unfortunately, is not really connected much to software, digital, because there is a few, but it's a real minority. The vast majority, it's hardware, new materials, new equipment, things that... so we are kind of talking about... actually, we are talking about industrial innovation. And in my career, I had the privilege of dealing with a lot of R&D centers, the Pirelli labs, the Telecom labs. And unfortunately, industrial innovation is an uncertain journey. And typically, it's longer than expected and it costs more. And that is a very bad fit with a financial product, a fund that has defined the time frame to invest. So as a matter of fact, to make a long story short, 20 years after this has started, there is not one single manager on planet Earth. And I have investors in Asia, I have investors in US, South America, the Middle East. There is not one single investor, manager in the world that was able to deploy money into new solutions, early stage, late stage, venture growth, for a decent period of time, delivering a decent return. Not one. So that has been an amazing loss of money. So if you look at those two things, you may understand why investors are skeptical at the moment. Because on one hand, they thought they were investing in green. And just to make one example, a big investor made to me in New York a few weeks ago, I thought I was investing in green, and the first investment was a gym in the Midwest whose purpose was helping overweighted women to be better, which is probably a good thing, but has nothing to do with green. And the other ones in venture capital, they basically all lost money. You have very few cases. You have Tesla, you have others, but it's just, a little bit. Ambiental success is based on the fact that in the last, since humans understood pollution, not only climate change, waste, water, the quality of the air, etc., started to develop solutions. And in the last 50, 60, 70 years, we have been developing a lot of solutions. And you know what? We are not using it at the scale that we should. We know how to recycle PET plastic since more than 20 years. We recycle around 15% of that. We all talk about how big the water issue is. We pollute water in residential, industrial, agriculture. Altogether, we recycle less than 2%. We know how to reduce the energy consumption of lighting, which represents 50%, 1/5 of the electricity bill on the planet. And LED can reduce it by 70%. I'm talking about 10% of the electricity bill of the planet. Is gigantic. Europe is the only continent where LED is above 50% adoption. Everybody else is at 15, 20. So we have been focusing on growing and scaling existing technologies with two very nice features. The first one, these are companies that are profitable because what they do allow them to conquer market share. They grow 3 times faster than the economy, and if you grow faster, you deliver very good financial returns. Okay? So just to give you a number, Ambiental's portfolio today, each year is producing more than $500 million of free cash flow. So we're not talking about flower power stuff. This is real industrial stuff. The other thing is that you can deliver real environmental impact. Because we have a company that is able to reduce by 5% the fuel consumption of tractors. But if you expand that to almost all the tractors around,
yes,
your impact is gigantic. And
yes.
I think that and you deliver real impact because 5% in real economy is much better than 100% solution that stays in a lab, because it's kind of useless with respect to the impact.
Very good. Yes. Thanks very much, Nino. Can I just thank you for this, because this particularly critical view, I think it's a very good way of taking into pragmatism what green economy should be about. It's true that in many companies, Nino, we have here in Ecomondo hundreds of companies. Many companies use a lot the indicators, the ESG, but in reality, we think that the real difference is done by the ones who are really implementing projects in reality now, even by reducing only 5%, but now, and the ones who are taking commitments for a long time or taking some very broad analysis without doing anything now. So the pragmatism to me that you are telling us is the technologies are there. Most of them, they can be implemented, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel in many cases, but we should do it in the short period and now. So this in your view something that it's happening and can happen? So even somebody like Trump or somebody criticizing maybe can take some benefit by giving a boost to the ones who really want to do it now. Is this your view? We cannot hear you, sorry. Sorry, Nino, we can't hear. Maybe they closed the microphone from here. There is a final part. Can you? Okay, our director doesn't want you to talk about Trump. So I think it's, we cannot hear you. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Can we check?
Is there Regia?
Yes, it's our Regia, it's not you. Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. But listen, first of all, let's talk about real stuff. What do we do? And I can only talk about what Ambienta is doing. We create factories to recycle plastic. We have water pumps and a lot of solutions to manage water better all around the world. We replace chemical ingredient in food and beverage with natural one. We replace the big gas boilers that are at the core of the manufacturing plant with electric ones. We are creating a global footprint for biostimulants, replacing fertilizers, etc., etc., etc. Those things are not affected by politicians. They are real businesses that are conquering market share in their field. And you know what? Biden didn't help us. Trump is not jeopardizing. To me, is completely all these narrative. But listen, I think there is a lot of something I've never understood. Environmental issues to me are the most important issues that each human being has, and I've never understood why should they be leftish and therefore the rightish should be. I mean, this is political, shouldn't be affecting industries. And by the way, The solutions are not going to be developed by flower power politicians. The solutions will only be developed by companies. Number one. Number two, the average profit margin of all our companies, the one to which we lend money, the one to which we own, 20%. So this year, Ambienta, so far, and I think we're going to be higher, has already invested more than $1 billion. Only our money, which means that more or less we mobilize 3 billion, and we have already. So I'm talking about real stuff, which honestly is not affected by Trump. And one thing on the European community. Instead of talking about all that money, the European community should do what they have been fantastic at doing when I started in the 90s. They were very brave. They started to do law that affected the way a chemical company was managed, cars, a Euro 6 diesel is. Today, we have, for instance, we are engaged in plastic recycling. We own the Ferrari, the core of each plastic recycling plant. We are booming in Africa. We are booming in India. We're actually growing in the US. You know which is the only continent which is completely stopped?
I can imagine.
Plastic. You know why? Because the Green Deal is a lot of blah, blah, blah. They haven't implemented a law on plastic recycling, and the framework which they just approved doesn't even have penalties, so that the hundreds of plants that were planned to be built in Europe are all on waiting list at the moment. We are still waiting for a law on fertilizers. So instead of talking about money that then goes into useless stuff, hydrogen, things that are against the environment, they should rule the economy as they have done in the early 90s. Europe, when I started, was at the far front of this. We had 80-90% of the environmental technology globally. If you now do the same exercise, you know where 80-90% of those technologies are? In China. Because they don't speak blah, 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 von der Leyen, Green Deal, all these conferences. We need action, guys, because the planet is not waiting.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Nino, for your speech. So we've seen different positions, and we've seen also everybody's asking Europe to be more pragmatic, of course, and to come back maybe to the command and control instead. And it's nice to see that Greta Thunberg spoke about blah, 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 and one of the most important finance guys says about blah, blah, blah. So I think we all want the same thing. So now I'm very pleased and honored to have with me Marco Duso from EY. He's a very young, he looks very young, and he is very young, I think, manager. And of course, EY at the global level is in touch with many companies. So can you tell us your same analysis from a point of view that is not only on finance, but on corporations and on business about the green economy in this period? Thanks.
Sure. Thanks for the invitation, Raimondo. And also, let me start by praising you and the team, because this event is incredibly data-driven. So much data. And that's not obvious nowadays. We are desperate for more data, and it's very international, although being in Italy, so really, I think, unique. So
thanks very much. So you give me the chance to thank the organizer, Delia Milioni, Marta Pantanetti, Davide Grossi, all the team of Sustainable Development Foundation, and Italy for Climate, and Chiara Montanini. Can we give an applause to them, because they work a lot. Thanks, Marco.
All right. I know it's a bit late, so I'll try to be quick. But we heard today a fantastic overview of what is going on around the world. Unfortunately, though, normally we focus on what is on the negative side. It's the job of newspapers, right? But in 2025, despite all the headlines that went a bit more on the negative direction, starting with obviously what's been happening in the US and spilling over to Europe, we've actually had some very positive headlines, especially if we look at other sides of the world. So you have, of course, part of the Green Deal that is going into the next phase, focusing more on competitiveness. You have India launching a new CO2 scheme for the first time. You have new targets for decarbonization in the UK, in Brazil, many other countries, at COP, where I will be also there next week. You have Middle East that is continuing as is. I arrived last night from Abu Dhabi, where ADIPEC is going on, and there the talk is the same of 1 year ago, right? Is energy transition because it's business. It was never about compliance. And of course, we talked about China being the powerhouse of green technology. So the reality is, again, Raimondo, this morning you introduced the very cool concept of humans cannot cope with exponential curves. Humans also struggle to distinguish perception and reality. And the perception is that we're going backward. The reality is that we will keep accelerating. But we are accelerating in a world that is more complex. And that's why we need data, and a lot of the data that you brought here today. So let me focus a little bit on business, because I think it's where probably we can add a bit more perspective from what was discussed today. For corporates, we are going through a reset, okay? We talked about the importance of data. I would also say that, especially in Europe, it's really important to think first principles. And I think Nino was doing that just right now, right? Because if we don't do that, then we're going to speak common sense, which is not what we need. We are going for a reset. We are coming from a sort of hype moment where it was about compliance, reporting, voluntary commitments, going on Davos and making long-term commitments. It was about experimenting, often wasting a lot of cash. I think now we are entering a new phase, which is not all backward. Decarbonization is becoming an energy and a national security topic. For companies, that means building a resilient business model. It's about creating value, long-term shareholder value. In the capitalist world, it has to be about that. It has to be about creating value. It's about scaling climate technologies, but technologies are the averaging as well. And that's really important. And it's about being much more intentional and strategic. So the green growth agenda is absolutely here. And we just need to move a mindset from being, also here in Europe, how do we decarbonize, to how do we win in a low carbon economy? That must be the mindset, because otherwise we're going to lose businesses, we're going to lose citizen support ultimately. So that's a bit where we are heading. Maybe perspective to debunk another myth of where businesses are to date. So it's true, I'm probably relatively young to let's say, the average leaders in Italy. But I had the privilege of leading the One Alliance within the World Economic Forum as well, of 120 CEOs of Fortune 500 across different continents. These CEOs today, they wrote a letter again ahead of COP30 to advocate for climate action. And these are across heavy emitters, different continents. And when they advocate for climate action, they really mean different things, but really they ask policymakers to be ambitious, to provide a stable framework, to provide incentives, to de-risk their projects, and to basically support the changes in their strategies, in their capital allocation. So I think that's really important, because businesses have not abandoned the climate agenda. If we also look at some stats on a survey, this is from Morgan Stanley, so you know, and the respondents are quite diverse. Almost 90% of companies see sustainability as a value creation opportunity. And the majority of them, 80% plus, are able to quantify the return on investment. I think this is really important. And again, probably the word sustainability and ESG didn't really help us in the last years, because in reality, we have to look at the names of concrete opportunities in the specific sectors. But sustainability is and must remain a business opportunity. And of course, then there is the growing risk on the other side that we have been overlooking for a long time, which is climate adaptation. And companies, let's say 57% of companies are experiencing an impact on operations for climate-related events. This, because of a lack of multilateral action that we are experiencing, will only increase. So the opportunities agenda and the risk agenda is extremely real for companies, and is here to stay. I pause here for a second. If you have
yes, thanks very much. It's a very good. So it's not the end. You and Nino are saying more or less the same thing from this perspective, but this has been a fil rouge of all these 2 days of States General of the Green Economy. So we can change something. Maybe something will be changed in the companies, like the net zero strategies or the targets, but the value creation and the possibility of competition, innovation, and business opportunities will stay there in spite of the backlash. So this is the main message that you see.
So absolutely, we have one important caveat, which is complexity on one side is increasing. So if we take the energy transition, it's going to play in different pace, in different geographies. So there is an element of increased complexity, a bit of schizophrenia on regulatory frameworks. If we think about the US, Trump won, then generated the IRA, right? And until 18 months ago, literally every single climate tech company was moving production to the US, right? It was literally that scenario. I think now it's changing, who knows, in 3 years, right? We've seen the New York election this morning. But the other important caveat is, maybe I use a slide to illustrate that, is that we've been coming through a few years of, let's say, hype where we didn't have a lot of rigor around business cases. We didn't have a lot of first principles thinking in many of these areas. As Nino was saying, sometimes we thought that like ESG would transform the world. Obviously, that was not going to be the case. If we look at climate tech verticals as a very concrete way to look at some of the opportunity spaces in the climate transition, we are seeing now a de-averaging of this. Some will continue to accelerate, some are facing reality. Hydrogen was mentioned, right? We are familiar with the economics of green hydrogen and how much this is not holding up to its hype. Some others are going to be accelerating even more. But again, the key fundamental question is to understand how to win in these spaces. How can we build competitiveness? Example. European Union needs to decarbonize to reduce dependency on fossil fuels. But do we have a strategy for minerals? Do we have a strategy for supply chain? These are the type of questions that we need to ask ourselves, whether it's a country or a business, to not sleepwalk into the next phase.
I love this slide, and I really like to check with you in a couple of years whether we can see, because you see which technologies are accelerating, and also maybe, I don't know if you can see it, China and Europe and the United States, which will be the driver of this acceleration or deceleration. And I'm very happy to see that in this forecast, the electric vehicle will stay business as usual, but the energy storage and the solar PV, they will accelerate sustainable materials. Clean hydrogen, as you said, is under, but I also see nuclear accelerating, and I don't like it very much, because I don't think that this could be a really green solution in countries where you still don't have it. So invest on nuclear, to my mind, but we should organize another conference for this. But let's see.
Just a point there, is exactly the type of area where there is not an honest conversation, right? Because whoever says that we're going to use nuclear to decarbonize a country is not saying something serious, right? Like, because nuclear is only present in very few countries. Every plant takes double, 3 times the time and the cost to be built today. So obviously nuclear is exciting because of SMR, because of breakthroughs in fusion. There's
but it can be a bubble, we will see.
The very, very interesting thing about nuclear is the fusion that happens in the sun.
Yes, I fully agree. So Marco, thanks very much. Thanks very much for this very interesting presentation. And so let me tell you, first of all, I have to thank you, and because you are staying here in spite of the lunchtime. The Roman lunchtime is 2 o'clock. But in other countries it's much earlier, so thanks, you are really heroes. We are about to close, but we have 2 very important things. I don't know if we can afford to have Chiara talking about COP30. We cannot afford, because we need to, you can do it, because we have Enel first, so if you have to leave, so we have to say goodbye to Chiara, and she has two very young twins, 18 months old, that are here, and so her husband is waiting with the baby here and there to go back to Rome. So thanks, you can go. Thanks very much. So we said which companies are doing really the things and not only talking. We have selected two for you. One is Enel and one is Chiesi. They are both very important. Enel is the champion of renewables, Italian company, as you know, champion of renewables all over the world. So I'm glad to have Francesca Petrarca connected with us. And then please stay, because Chiesi will announce something very, very important in which we will close the session with this announcement. It's something that it's really worth. So Francesca, can you hear us?
Eleonora, good morning, Petrarca.
Sorry, Eleonora.
It's okay, don't worry.
They wrote me Francesca, and I always called you Francesca, and I'm very sorry.
Because probably you was thinking about the poet.
Francesco Petrarca is a very good poet. So I'm sorry, Eleonora.
Don't worry, good morning.
Good morning. So thanks for having waited for so much, but can you tell us about Enel engagement in the world, in Italy, and if you have some nice things and news to tell us?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation to Fondazione Sviluppo Sostenibile, Mr. Ronchi and Mr. Orsini, for sure. Very happy to be here. And yes, brief introduction on Enel. Enel Group, as you probably know, is focused on different business lines and is also focused on a strong commitment on development, construction, and operation of renewable power plants. We have a quite diversified portfolio that includes wind, PV, geothermal, and hydro, and we are present today in something like 20 countries across Europe, North and South Africa, Africa and Asia. And just to provide you with some figures, we in 2024 we recorded an operational renewable fleet of 1,400 power plants with 65.7 gigawatt of installed renewable capacity for a production on early base of around 150 terawatt hour per year. So, coming back to your point regarding Italy, we are focused on a strong activities and commitment in development of renewable new initiatives, in particular with focus on PV, photovoltaic and wind, utility scale onshore project. We have no specific, let me say, preclusion on some regions. I mean that where we find solid industrial condition, attractive profitability, no local normative constraints, good project, we move forward to develop new PV or wind asset to enlarge our portfolio. Our development strategy is quite flexible. I mean that we, on one end, we are focused on a completely in-house and greenfield approach, from design to full development activities, leveraging on our experience both in Italy and abroad. On the other hand, we are also interested in acquiring projects developed by third parties. Other developer or other player of the market that are not interested anymore in going ahead with the development, the construction, and asset management. Just to complete the picture, for sure, we are also focused on the repowering of our wind assets to replace current wind turbines with the new ones with higher performance. I don't want to repeat the content of the colleagues who have spoken before than me with the technology trends, but for sure we can leverage on very, very good performance both in PV and wind trend to maximize value in terms of production and project integration with the environment as of today. Coming to your second point regarding some examples of our approach in renewable, in particular in development of new projects, I mean utility scale project, I can note the case of Piani della Marina, that is a power plant located in Tarquinia, provincia di Viterbo, Lazio region, 170 megawatt size, operating by the beginning of last year, that is currently the largest solar plant in operation in Italy. Some curiosities about it. The plant, first of all, can leverage on biface photovoltaic modules, absorbing solar resource from both sides through its panel placed on tracker structure. The configuration maximizes production for what I just said. I mean that we have a production per year equal to 280, 300 gigawatt hour per year. That is something like the electricity needs of over than 11,000 of family.
Very good. So you are, we always talk about social and green together, how to make green investments that could also be a nice social double dividend and win-win. And this is a very interesting point because maybe you have three, because you have agriculture, you have territories, and you have photovoltaics. That's very good. It's very good.
You got the point perfectly, because this project can, let me say, it's a concrete example of the integration between renewables, energy production on one end, and the local agricultural context on the other end. And it's a real proof that it's possible to connect these two worlds, although in the past they are completely on the opposite side of the table, let me say. In particular for this project, the peculiarities probably are two more. I mean that the agricultural activities are carried out in the open areas between the rows of the PV panels, and the agricultural activities are carried out by are managed by the local farmer that is at the same time the owner of the PV areas.
Very good.
Let me say
So you are closing also the gap about economics for agriculture business. You know, sometimes they need a boost because agriculture is a business that goes ups and downs depending on many different drivers. And so thanks very much, Eleonora. I'm sorry that we are closing the session, so we don't have more time. But can people find more information about this plant on internet or?
Yes, on our website we have a lot of information on this project and on other projects and initiatives of Enel for local communities involvement. And also to go through our approach in development new renewable asset to basically go in the same direction of the country goals in terms of renewable energy transition and targets to 2030.
Okay, thanks very much and good luck for your job. Thanks very much.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
So now look at what Chiesi Group, a big pharmaceutical company, we are talking about companies who are really changing the world by doing actions. We interviewed Maria Paola Chiesi, the vice president of the company. Look at this interview and she will tell us something that is very, very important.
Good morning, Maria Paola. Thanks for being with us at the States General of the Green Economy in Rimini. I'm very glad that you are here with us. I know how much you personally and your group is committed to sustainability, and we will not tell people in the audience why you are not with us, because I think it's very important to know it, but we will tell it later. But before going into this topic, we know that your company and the Chiesi Group is committed since many years to sustainability, decarbonization and circularity. So please let us know a bit more about your group and what does it mean for you to be committed to sustainability?
So good morning, Raimondo. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm so happy to be here with you, although virtually. Just a few words about Chiesi. Chiesi is a pharmaceutical company. It's an international research-oriented pharmaceutical company headquartered in Parma, Italy. But we operate throughout 30 countries, and we employ over 7,500 people globally. We reached revenues of 3.4 billion euros last year, so we are a mid-sized company with a double-digit growth. Our mission is to place science and innovation at the service of the patients, of course, because we are a pharmaceutical company, but also at the service of communities and the planet. And we have formally embedded this purpose in our bylaws, in our statute, by becoming a benefit corporation, both in Italy, in France, Société à Mission, and in the United States and in Colombia. We are also a certified B Corp, and we are committed to net zero, to reach net zero by 2035. So this is, in essence, what we think is our commitment to sustainability, that we believe is not simply a slogan, but it's really our way of doing business.
Thanks very much. Before going a little bit more in detail, I have a surprise for you, Maria Paola. I want to show you something that you maybe will remember when you will see it. Hold on and watch this very short video.
Per risolvere il problema bisogna andare alla radice, e cioè sostituire il propellente. Quindi siamo partiti già alla fine del 2018, 7 anni di studio clinico, quindi ritest clinico sui pazienti dell'efficacia e della
La fermo un attimo,
sicurezza.
7 anni ha detto?
7 anni di lavoro sia per ristudiare l'efficacia e la sicurezza di impiego sul paziente, sia per reindustrializzare, perché significa ripartire da zero, fare un prodotto completamente diverso, 350 milioni di euro di investimento. Questo ci porterà ad avere nel 2026 uno spray che riduce del 90% il suo carbon footprint.
L'avete trovato quindi il propellente nuovo?
L'abbiamo trovato.
Vabbè, un applauso, ci sta, alla fine.
It's very good to see it again. It was 3 years ago on this very same stage in Rimini, and you announced that you have finally solved the technical problem, and you will produce this spray inhaler that will reduce a lot the carbon footprint. And now you've done it. So the big surprise we want to tell people is the reason why you are not with us physically is because, where are you?
So I'm currently in France, in Blois, in one of our manufacturing plants, and we are here because we are inaugurating the second manufacturing line of our new spray inhalers containing the new propellant that reduces the carbon footprint of these inhalers by 90%. And this is really a dream that comes true, because this will really allow us to tackle the most difficult part of reducing emissions, that is scope 3 emissions. And this will allow really to reduce our scope 3 emissions in the next 5 years, next 5-10 years by 80%. And this is, of course, what we need in order to achieve our goal of net zero. So it's really an emotion.
Sorry if I interrupt you, because maybe for technicians, one can think that a spray inhaler is not that important in terms of emissions, but you said that the amount of emissions in your scope 1, 2, and 3 total emissions is very high from the spray inhaler. So reducing that, you are reducing the whole, let's say, the whole cake. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. We are specialized in lung delivery of medicines, and one of the possibilities to do this is through spray inhalers. Of course, this is one of the options, the therapeutic options that the patients have, and it is very important that the patients have availability of different therapeutic options, because not all are fit for all the patients. Okay, so unfortunately, these spray inhalers contain a propellant that allows the delivery, like a normal spray, that has a high global warming potential. All in all, this has a strong impact on our Scope 3 emissions, and our Scope 3 emissions represent 80% of our total emissions. We were very, let's say, good at reducing Scope 1 and definitely very good at reducing Scope 2, but what we have now, the major challenge we have is really to reduce Scope 3. And this will allow to reduce Scope 3 because we are changing the product, essentially.
So you are now producing this new, with this new methodology and the new gas propellant, you're now producing. So the next spray inhalers, maybe, I don't know, in 1 year or 2 years, I don't know, they will be with 80% less emissions. And do you think that is this also, let's say, a commercial success? Could it be that you are also leading or paving the way for the whole sector, or the pharma sector, to follow you, because it's not only Chiesi having this impact. So is this something also as kind of a bet to the future, to invest in sustainable innovation?
We strongly think that sustainability and business success, business development go hand in hand. We are not the only one who is investing in this. So other pharmaceutical companies that are involved in this field are doing the same. And I think this is very important because this demonstrates that together we can really improve our ecosystem. So the effort of a single company would be quite meaningless if there isn't an ecosystem working towards the same direction. So the other pharmaceutical companies, the healthcare systems wanting to decarbonize, the suppliers providing the new propellants and the new ingredients necessary, the manufacturing partners also, because it will be quite an effort. We are doing this through our own investment in manufacturing, but also through partnership. And so it means that here in Europe, in this sector in specific, we are mobilizing an entire ecosystem to reach the same goal, that is decarbonization of the healthcare system, in particular for the delivery of medicines to the lung. And this demonstrates that Europe is capable of doing this for the benefit of the European patients, but of the patients all over the world, with technologies that are invented and developed in Europe, with innovation in the industrial component that is developed in Europe. And so I think this demonstrates that Europe can have really a say in the innovative development of our society.
Great. Well, thanks very much. What I think that the big output of this story is it comes from the very beginning. Instead of asking how difficult this was. You have done it. You have studied for 7 years. You have found a technical solution. You have invested money, and then in 3 years you have implemented it. I think this is exactly what we need, because the big difference in the world now is not about targets. It's about achievements and real implementation. And your story is a very good example for all the business sector. So thanks very much, Maria Paola. Maybe we will have you next year physically with us again. Thanks very much.
With great pleasure. Thank you, Raimondo. Thank you all.
So 3 years ago, she said she would have done it. She did, and they did it. 350 million became 400 million. This is one of the nice stories. I know that you know many of them around the world, and these people are investing their money and they're putting their companies into the real green economy, not the blah, blah, blah. So thanks very much. We hope that you liked the session. I think, Amy, that we should be quite satisfied about having organized this very first international session in the Stati Generali, the green economy.
I think we've had an incredible amount of perspectives from all over the world. And I mean, also, even with this last presentation, we've understood what, things that you might not even think about. An inhaler, whoever even thinks about it, is something that's generating a lot of emissions. And yet, by tackling something in your domain, every action can make a difference. We've seen a lot from all over the world, and it is quite inspiring, actually. When it's easy to feel pessimistic at times, you see there's a lot of people working hard to realize.
And we just had a breaking news from your country that Mr. Trump is rethinking about green economies. Maybe he can change his mind. And Ursula von der Leyen is calling China to make agreement and to have a diplomatic agreement between Europe and China for the future. So thanks very much. Let's always remember to take the green economy compass in our pocket and use it when it's needed. Enjoy your lunch, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much.